Chapter 284. In the first batch of ordinary people who were captured, the oldest was 70 years old, and the youngest was only 1 year and 3 months old. There were 2 pregnant women in the middle. At that time, I strongly opposed this experiment, so I was locked up. They wanted me to reflect. Inyi sneered and said, when I finished my reflection, the first experiment was already done. At that time, they were calculating the results of the experiment, and those who had turned into zombies were still lying on the experiment table in pieces. Even the pregnant women and children were the same. The pregnant women and children were taken out to do the experiment alone. At that time, they recorded that the younger the child, after being infected, the more likely it was that the mutated zombie would have special abilities. After the pregnant women were infected, their bodies would quickly die, and the energy would be supplied to the child in their bodies, causing the child to undergo a second mutation. Speaking of this, his eyes were already red. I remember many years ago, when I was still a student. At that time, I thought that all the knowledge I had learned could be used to serve the country. But later, I found that I had become an accomplice. I could do nothing but watch those people. What happened later? Xiao Qing was very calm, but her body was full of murderous intent. The reason why she didn't explode yet was that she wanted to know all the facts to decide what to do next. After a long time, they began to be dissatisfied and began to use paranormals for experiments. These paranormals were against the base chief at that time, and some of them were useless because of their special abilities, so they were all sent here. As we all know, paranormals can't be infected, but they use some unknown means to transform and infect paranormals. After the experiment, some paranormals retained the vitality of humans, and some of them were poisoned by zombies. What's more, they not only retained the ability of zombies, but also retained their abilities. One of the paranormals was pregnant, and after the experiment, they cut open her belly and got a half-zombie baby. This baby actually had the ability to control other zombies. They were ecstatic and wanted to create a zombie king to control all the zombies in the world, but retribution was not good. Those transformed paranormals all retained a certain degree of consciousness, and when they found the opportunity, they escaped, and then launched their revenge. The entire base was destroyed. Lu Dong saw that the situation was not good, so he secretly escaped with his people and contacted the research institute in the capital, but he didn't expect that those experimental subjects would follow us. You all know what happened next. Inyi was a little dispirited. He should be suffering from the pain of being able to see but not being able to save them. After a long time of torment, he was so thin that only his bones were left. Xiao Qing patted him on the shoulder and was stunned. She glanced at Inyi again but didn't say anything. Inyi was hiding something, and Xiao Qing knew that. But everyone had their own secrets, so she didn't want to ask. The biggest problem now was that she didn't want this group of beasts with human faces to reach the capital alive. It was better for such disgusting things to be burned to ashes and buried in the ground. That would be more suitable for them to return to their homeland. Inyi continued. The group of zombies outside was led by the experimental subjects at that time. They surrounded them but didn't kill them. In fact, they wanted to torture this group of people until they collapsed bit by bit. They wanted to make them suffer a fate worse than death, and then kill them. But they didn't expect that the reinforcements would come so quickly. Chapter 285. Xiao Qing nodded. She didn't say what she was going to do. She just sat in the corner. When she closed her eyes, the daughter seeds had been quietly spread out. Any paranormals who hadn't reached level 4, or those with special abilities, would be quietly infiltrated by her daughter seeds. In other words, the life and death of this group of people were in her hands. However, Xiao Qing understood that these people could die, but they had to have nothing to do with her. Otherwise, it would be very troublesome. By the time night had completely fallen, everyone was exhausted. Wave after wave of attacks had exhausted their physical strength. If this continued, their defenses would be breached very soon. Before the new wave of attacks came, what they needed to do was to change the defense. Those who were resting would take the place of this group of people. One of them suddenly said, "Why do I feel so cold? The weather is changing more and more." Xiao Qing looked out of the window. Countless zombies were wandering. At this time, a sharp howl sounded. Another wave of attacks began. At night, there was no light. The whole warehouse was dark. Xiaoqing could clearly see cracks on the door and windows. There was a very simple principle called thermal expansion and contraction. Xiaoqing had to admit that those experimental subjects were very smart. They used ice and fire powers to break the last barrier under the cover of the night. If she didn't know those things, Xiaoqing would definitely remind them. However, after knowing everything, Xiaoqing didn't want to remind these beasts. No, calling them beasts was simply an insult to beasts. Lambs would kneel for milk, crows would feed back, and these beasts were completely heartless. Soon, the doors and windows were completely broken. Those who had just changed the defense didn't have time to react. Zombies poured in. There were several different zombies in the zombie crowd. In addition to the little girl, the blind boy, and the young man with the baby zombie in his chest, there were several other zombies with different appearances. One of them was a woman. Her appearance was very gentle, especially her pair of gentle eyes. Other than the scara of her eyes being a little smaller, she looked very normal. However, the skin and flesh on her hands were almost completely rotten. Moreover, they seemed to be much thicker than a normal person's arms. The other was a young man. His face was pale, but there was a bulge on his back, which made him look like a born turtle. He was bare-chested. When he turned around, people could see that there was a woman's face on his back. It was a woman's face that looked exactly like him. The woman could even talk. She had been crying softly. "Brother, brother, I'm in pain." It was said that those who were older either died on the operating table or were destroyed after the experiment because they were worthless. There were only a few experimental subjects left. The one who controlled the zombie crowd was the baby zombie living in the young man's chest. Its body was weak, so it had to rely on the young man to move. The group of researchers almost went crazy. What could be more terrifying than their experimental subjects coming back for revenge? Xiaoqing looked at the group of experimental subjects indifferently. She didn't want to do anything. It seemed that she didn't need to do anything. The only thing she had to think about now was how to take Lan and Yi away. She and Erdai would definitely be fine, but Lan and Yi would attract the attention of the zombies. Those people had now collapsed. They almost gave up resisting, but at this time, there was a light not far away, and there was a lot of noise. Chapter 286. Lu Dong's old voice was heard. "Look, the rescuers are here. Hold on a little longer. Just a little longer and we'll be rescued." Only then did those people pull themselves together and carry out the last resistance, fighting and retreating, waiting for rescue. Those zombies also became anxious, seeing that the rescue team was about to arrive. If they did not quickly end the battle, they would be surrounded. Maybe some of them can survive this time. Even God doesn't help them. Yin Ye's disappointed voice sounded in Xiaoqing's ears. He said in a low voice, "When it's over, you have to be careful. They won't let you, who know their secret, live." "You." Before Xiaoqing could finish speaking, she saw Yin Yi stand up and slowly walk toward Lu Dong. Lu Dong was very vigilant. As soon as he heard the footsteps, he turned his head. "Yin Yi, what are you doing?" Yin Yi didn't say anything, but the white coat on his body fluttered as if it was blown by the wind. When he was about to approach Lu Dong, his clothes were instantly torn apart, and several black tentacles shot out in an instant. The two people standing in front of Lu Dong had their bodies pierced by the tentacles in an instant. Then, Yin Yi quickly took a step forward, and the other tentacles wriggling around him aimed at Lu Dong. Lu Dong took 2 steps back in panic. Soon, he calmed down. Yin Ye's tentacles seemed to be stuck on an invisible barrier and couldn't move forward. "You actually..." Lu Dong was so frightened that he lost his voice. Yin Yi glanced at him and seemed to know that he wouldn't be able to kill Lu Dong today. He turned his head to the others, and the other experimentals quickly gathered with Yin Yi. Only then did Xiaoqing understand why she kept feeling that something was amiss when Yin Yi was telling the story. How could those controlled experimental subjects escape so easily? They were obviously set free by Yin Yi. He watched Lu Dong and the others do such a thing, but he couldn't do anything to stop them. Under the torment of conscience and guilt, Yin Yi did something crazy. He injected himself with the zombie virus and then experimented on himself. Obviously, Yin Yi had successfully modified himself. Then, he carried out the second step of destroying Lu Dong and the others. He secretly released the experimental subjects and then led this group of experimental subjects to take revenge. There was one thing that Yi didn't tell her, but Xiaoqing knew that Lu Dong's experiment wasn't as simple as Yi said. They seemed to have transplanted parts of zombies or mutant animals into superpowered people's bodies. For example, the eyes on the little girl's face, which clearly didn't belong to her, the arms of the young man, and finally the tentacles on Yinye's body. They were destined not to be able to kill Lu Dong today because they didn't know how long Lu Dong's spiritual barrier could last. Therefore, what they needed to do was to kill as many researchers as possible. When there were very few people left, the rescue team finally arrived. Yi waved his hand and said, "Retreat." When they passed by Xiaoqing said softly to Yi, "Don't worry, he won't live long." "Thank you very much." Yi lowered his voice and said. The zombies retreated like a tide. The rescue team was dumbfounded. They were ready to fight hard and lose a lot of people, but those zombies ran away by themselves? But it was a good thing after all. The leaders of several bases hurried into the warehouse. As soon as they entered, they saw corpses everywhere. Only Lu Dong and the other 3 people in white coats were still alive. Of course, Xiaoqing and the others were more conspicuous. One of the leaders of the bases hurriedly said, "Sorry, we came late. It took us some time to gather people, but we didn't expect." Chapter 287. Lu Dong hadn't recovered from his panic. He didn't expect that Yi would dare to experiment on him. He didn't react until Xiaoqing patted her and took Dai and the others out. He pointed at Xiaoqing and said, "Get her. Everyone catch her. She's in cahoots with zombies." No matter what, they couldn't let Xiaoqing live. Otherwise, all their secrets would be exposed. Those people were stunned for a moment, then they looked at Xiaoqing. Xiaoqing didn't get angry, she just calmly raised her eyebrows and said, "If you want to speak, you need evidence. Is this old Mr. scared out of his wits? I just came here to deliver supplies. What does it have to do with zombies? Secondly, before I came here, I was on a mission with someone else. When I returned to the base, you were already surrounded. Many people can testify to that. How could you have time to collude with zombies? You must have been scared out of your mind." Lu Dong said with conviction, "Yi is a zombie who lurked here. You were so close to him and talked so much. There must be something wrong. Besides, the man behind you is not a human. If you want to prove that you have nothing to do with zombies, sure. Zombies can't talk. Let him say something." Xiaoqing's eyes were filled with frost. She looked at Lu Dong as if she was looking at a dead man. She sneered and said, "He had a disease when he was young. He was burned until he became stupid. He's not a mute, but he's more like a mute. You want him to talk to prove that he's not a zombie? You're really trying to frame him." Qin Zishi and the others were also in the crowd. They said, "Open your eyes and listen with your ears. Don't be scared out of your wits. Everyone looks like a zombie's accomplice." At this moment, Lu Dong was no longer the same person who would comb his hair neatly even when he was on the run. Even a fly would break its leg if it stood on his hair. Now, he was even older, and his gaze was filled with despair and madness. "Say something. Say something." Xiaoqing looked at Lu Dong coldly. She was holding a vine in her hand. She was ready to kill Lu Dong directly. However, Dai suddenly approached her and hugged her. He said in a hoarse voice, "Qing." Xiaoqing was stunned. She seemed to have heard Dai call her. Was it a hallucination? Dai rubbed Xiaoqing's neck with his face. He said with difficulty, "Qing." His voice was as if he hadn't spoken for many years. But Xiaoqing was overjoyed. She turned around and held Dai's chin, her eyes sparkling. "What did you call me?" Dai looked very serious. He said with difficulty, "Qing." Xiaoqing kissed Dai happily. Yin Chiue, who was in the crowd, was jealous. He was jealous, but he couldn't vent his anger on his own people. So, he pointed his gun at Lu Dong and said, "Are you scared out of your mind? If you're crazy, you should be taken away. Take your medicine and lock him up. Don't let him out to bite people." Some people who were looking at Xiaoqing and the others with vigilant eyes also breathed a sigh of relief. It was better to be safe than sorry. After Dumbo, he proved his identity, Lu Dong became dispirited. He had originally made a guess. Since he was at the end of the road, He had no choice but to try to bite Xiaoqing. Unexpectedly, he had guessed wrong. As long as Xiaoqing revealed what he had done, not only would his reputation be ruined, but he would also be put under house arrest. Lu Dong had enjoyed a lifetime of glory, a lifetime of being high and mighty. How could he allow Xiaoqing to ruin everything? However, Xiaoqing didn't seem to want to say it out. She took Lan's hand and went to Qin Zishi. She handed Lan to Qin Zishi and said, "I brought her back safely, but she was scared out of her wits. You have to give her a raise." Qin Zishi smiled, and two small dimples appeared. "Don't worry." A group of people came and went back in a mighty manner. It was as if they didn't have anything to do. They didn't leave directly, but stayed in the reservoir. After all, the dead bodies had to be dealt with. Otherwise, it would be troublesome if they turned into zombies. What's more, it's nighttime. What if they get attacked by zombies? So, they had to stay here and wait for dawn to return to the base. Xiaoqing calmly gathered her friends and called Qin Zishi. After all, Lan was there. Qin Zishi would definitely know the inside story. It was better for her to have the final say. After everyone was gathered, Xiaoqing checked to see if anyone was eavesdropping. Then, she told her friends everything that had happened in the past 2 days, including her guess. Gu Panpan was the most bad-tempered one. She jumped up and was ready to kill Lu Dong and his friends. What the hell? How can such scum deserve to live? I'll send them to hell. Don't be impulsive. Didn't you see that he has already pointed the finger at me today? He's just worried that I'll expose everything he's done. I originally wanted to expose all these things, then ruin his reputation and let him die painfully. But I thought of another point. According to Yin Yi, the General Research Institute of the capital city is quite clear about their affairs. In other words, they don't mind Lu Dong's human experiments. If this matter is exposed, will they protect Lu Dong? I don't want to bet on whether they have a conscience or not, so I'm going to suppress this matter for the time being and do it myself. Xiaoqing said lightly. She couldn't trust the senior management of the capital city anymore. Instead of hoping that they would deal with Lu Dong, she would do it herself. Chapter 288. Qin Zishi was calmer than Xiaoqing imagined. He bit his nails and said after a while, "I think it's feasible." Xiaoqing nodded. It was not that her idea was too dark, but the world was like this. All the crows in the world were equally dark. Instead of hoping that the capital would do something to Lu Dong, she would rather do it herself. What was the saying again? Do it yourself to get enough food and clothing. Something seemed wrong. In short, Xiaoqing was ready to kill. She would not let Lu Dong reach the capital. After a peaceful night, Lu Dong requested to set off early the next morning. He would not be at ease until he reached the capital. It was not his fault that he was timid. It was just that he had been on tenterhooks all this time. He had reached the bottom line. If it went on like this, he would collapse before anyone could kill him. Only when he reached the capital, contacted the research institute, and got his personal protection, could he be at ease. Xiaoqing was too lazy to pay attention to him. She was teaching Air Dai how to speak sentence by sentence. Yesterday's sentence was like a flash in the pan. No matter how Xiaoqing guided Air Dai could not say a word. Looking at his aggrieved appearance, Xiaoqing sighed helplessly. She had a long way to go. Since the morning, Lu Dong had been emphasizing that Xiaoqing wanted to harm him and wanted others to separate them. The person in charge of the survival base in S City patted Xiaoqing's shoulder and said, "I heard that the researcher beside him is a zombie who has been hiding for a long time. He is probably scared. Now everyone looks like a zombie to him. We can only temporarily separate you and him. Sorry for the inconvenience." Xiaoqing waved her hand and said, "I understand. Anyway, he will be sent back to the capital soon. Out of sight, out of mind." The more isolated they were, the easier it would be to do it. No one would suspect her. After all, no one would think that she would do something to Lu Dong when Lu Dong had been targeting her. The darkness under the light was like that. The more Lu Dong targeted her, the less suspicious she would be when something happened. Xiaoqing was very leisurely. She even had time to cut fruits and share them with her friends. She was now waiting for nightfall. Once nightfall arrived, it would be her home ground. They did not directly send Lu Dong and the others to the capital. Instead, they first returned to the nearest base to rest and reorganize. Then, they mobilized a portion of their men to act as escorts to send Lu Dong back to the capital. The first night after leaving the reservoir was not spent in the base. They set up camp on the spot. In order to protect Lu Dong's tent was set up in the center. The others' tents surrounded his tent several times. He had also set up 4 night watch squads to take turns with each other. If anything were to happen, they would be able to react quickly and protect Lu Dong. In the evening, they ate pork bone soup stewed with vegetables. The soup was freshly cooked and the vegetables were fresh. The taste was very delicious. After eating, Xiaoqing and the others went into the tent to conserve energy. Night came quickly. In the wee hours of the morning, Xiaoqing woke up from her sleep. She plucked a petal of the autumn lotus and tore through space. After the evolution of her special ability, Xiaoqing's control over the power of space had become much smoother. Although she could cross space through cracks before, the landing point and distance were all within a general range. Now, she could control it very carefully. For example, when she appeared in Lu Dong's tent from her tent, Lu Dong and the others were sleeping very soundly. Especially after the fragrance of the autumn lotus slowly filled the air, they slept even more soundly. Xiaoqing picked one out of the 4 who had escaped the net. Of course, this person was not Lu Dong. She would let Lu Dong die in the end, dying in endless fear and despair. Chapter 289. After selecting the target, Xiaoqing calmly took out tape and sealed his mouth. Then, the daughter in his body woke up. No matter how deep asleep a person was, they would be awakened by the pain. When the person woke up, he found that his mouth was sealed and his body was tied up. He couldn't even moan. Lu Dong and the others were sleeping beside him, but he couldn't ask for help. He could only feel something raging in his body, taking away his life bit by bit. He was like a fish on a chopping board. He couldn't resist at all. He didn't know why, but he remembered that when he was doing experiments in the past, those people on the experiment table were also in despair at that time. They couldn't resist, they couldn't even struggle. They could only watch as the scalpel cut open their skin and even their stomachs. They looked at their own bodies, like pigs being slaughtered, spread out on the operating table. Their fresh organs were still beating. The next morning, Lu Dong woke up late. This was the best sleep he had in a while. There were no roars of zombies, no rotting smell, no despair, and no fear. Then he opened his eyes and saw the corpse hanging in the tent. The naked corpse was hung in the posture of a victim in Western mythology. The body was full of scars, and there wasn't even a piece of intact skin. The most frightening thing was that his eyelids had been cut off, revealing his protruding eyeballs. The corners of his mouth had also been cut open into a smile. Blood was like lipstick, smeared all over his cracked mouth. It was bright red, making him look like a clown who was juggling. Bloody horror and indescribable panic. How did he die? Lu Dong didn't know at all. He even slept soundly and had a beautiful dream. In the dream, he returned to the capital, entered the research institute, and used his power to capture Xiaoqing. Xiaoqing was lying on the operating table for the experiment, and he could do whatever he wanted to her. However, when he woke up, his companion died in such a horrible way. Did the experimental subjects come back for revenge? No, they had already left. Lu Dong's eyes became red and bulging because of excessive fear and panic. He was stunned for a few seconds before he rolled out of the tent. Someone died. That blood-curdling scream reverberated throughout the entire campsite. Xiaoqing flipped over in her bed and smirked. She slowly got up and changed her clothes without any hurry. Then, she led her son and a group of friends in the direction of the sound. Lu Dong had been carried up by the paranormals who had heard the commotion. His legs were weak, and he almost lost control of his bowels. To be honest, he had seen countless corpses that were even more terrifying than this one. He had even created many terrifying corpses with his own hands. However, when this corpse became his companion, when his life was also threatened, everything was different. Many people entered the tent and untied the corpses. When they untied the corpses, they realized that the corpses had been hung up with strips of bedsheets. When the corpses were brought out, the faces of the people in charge of the bases were very ugly. The people on night patrol were the best of the best in their bases. However, Someone had been killed and tortured to death at that, and the people on night patrol had not noticed at all. It was a slap in the face. One of the people in charge took a deep breath and then called the people in charge of night patrol over. Did you hear any suspicious sounds or see any suspicious people last night? Chapter 290. They all blushed and shook their heads. As night patrols, they were very serious. They didn't slack off at all. However, someone sneaked in, killed a man, and left without anyone noticing. Should they say that the person was too strong, or that they were too weak? Lu Dong was half broken at the moment. He was being held up, but he was still shouting, "Someone died right next to me! Right next to me! Do you all eat shit?" Someone sneaked in and no one noticed it. You'll only pay attention to it when everyone's head is cut off one day, right? Everyone's face turned pale. After all, the truth was too embarrassing, especially when the body was lying there. They didn't even need to explain. Lu Dong no longer had his usual seriousness and calmness. He jumped up and down and said, "It must be her. She must have colluded with the zombies. She wants to kill me." As he spoke, he pointed at Xiaoqing, his spittle flying far away. Xiaoqing, on the other hand, was very calm. She rolled up her sleeves and said, "You've been slandering me from the beginning. I didn't lower myself to your level because you were overly frightened. I originally thought that after you settled down for a day, you would be able to regain your calmness. I didn't expect that you would still pour dirty water on me. Does that mean that as long as someone dies, it's me who kills them? Does it mean that I colluded with the zombies? If you can't poop, will you blame me for blocking your ass?" Xiaoqing's words were vulgar, but it made many people feel happy. They really hated those who bit people like mad dogs. They didn't know how to look at people's faces. Except for ordering people around, they looked down on others. However, Lu Dong's status was high. So many people didn't dare to provoke him. Xiaoqing's words were exactly what they were thinking. Xiaoqing didn't stop. "According to your theory, if your wife has a baby, it's also mine, right? Why don't you go up to the sky and stand side by side with the sun? Do you want me to send you?" Mwah. She had a cold expression on her face as she said those sarcastic words in a serious manner. It was actually quite touching. Lu Dong was already on the verge of a mental breakdown, and now he was even more agitated. He pointed at Xiaoqing and shouted, "Is there a second possibility? It's you. It must be you. It must be you and those zombies working together. You and Yi are the same. It's the same. All right, hurry up and bring him to take his medicine." Xiaoqing made a goodbye gesture and said, "You can't stop taking the medicine. Hurry up and feed him the medicine, so that he won't be tormented later." Those paranormals also felt that Xiaoqing was right, so several of them carried Lu Dong away. Even when he was being carried away, Lu Dong was still cursing loudly. The others cleaned up the corpses and other things that needed to be cleaned up. Although they all believed that it wasn't Xiaoqing's doing, it was still very strange after all. They couldn't catch the culprit, so they were also panicked. Who knew who the culprit was? Was it really Lu Dong? Or was it targeting everyone? They couldn't help but panic at such a silent method of killing people. Could it be that the group of high-level zombies had returned? But why did they want to kill Lu Dong? It was like Lu Dong was a delicious cake. They had been besieging him since the beginning. TSK, TSK. Those who didn't know better would think that Lu Dong had slept with those zombies' wives. That was why they kept chasing him. Xiaoqing stretched herself and lazily calculated who she should kill next. That was the effect she wanted. She wanted Lu Dong to be terrified and desperate, but there was nothing he could do but watch his death coming. If she let him die so easily, how could she be worthy of those who were used as test subjects and died on the operating table? There were also those pitiful people who were still alive, but could only watch as they turned into monsters. They would rather die a quick death. Chapter 291. She was not a saint, nor an angry youth. Sometimes, when her bottom line was crossed, she could turn into Ashura. Ashura would not win people over with virtue, nor would she influence people with kindness. She would only kill to stop killing. The next person to die had been decided. Xiaoqing took the snacks handed over by Dummy and gnawed on them. Although something like this had happened, they still had to go on. but they sped up their pace on the way back. If they didn't stay in the wild at night and return to the base, they should be fine. They didn't believe that those zombies could chase them to the base and kill them. Lu Dong obviously suffered a big blow. His hair was much whiter. During lunch, he was holding a bowl around the pot. His expression was a little dull. Xiaoqing didn't sympathize with him at all. Was old an excuse to do whatever he wanted? The more he flaunted his seniority, the more Xiaoqing hated him. He was already very old and should have been more clear-headed. He should have known what he was doing. However, he was the main culprit among the group of beasts. He was the initiator of everything. He was the perpetrator of all evil. Xiaoqing glanced at him. Her eyes became colder. She didn't want to make Lu Dong happy when she was unhappy. So, Xiaoqing silently activated the daughter in one of the researchers' bodies. Everyone was eating with their heads lowered, but one of the researchers beside Lu Dong suddenly swelled up like an inflated balloon. Lu Dong accidentally touched him. Like a punctured balloon, the researcher's body quickly exploded. At the moment of explosion, the daughter turned into ashes. There was absolutely no trace left. As the flesh and blood flew and fell to the ground, there was no trace left. Those pieces of flesh fell like rain, falling on Lu Dong's head, body, and bowl. He was completely stunned. He looked at the porridge in the bowl that was dyed red by the pieces of flesh. Then, he suddenly lay on the ground and began to vomit. He vomited very violently, as if he wanted to vomit out his internal organs. Not only him, but the people around him were vomiting too. After all, those pieces of flesh didn't have eyes. Not only did they fall on him, but they also fell on other people. It was just that Lu Dong had more. Imagine, while they were eating, a living person beside them suddenly exploded. Blood, flesh, and bones flew everywhere and even fell into the bowl. Who wouldn't vomit if it happened to them? Other than vomiting, he was more afraid, especially Lu Dong. He felt like he was going crazy. Death was following him like a shadow, unwilling to let him go for even a moment. He even felt a chill run down his spine, as if the Grim Reaper's scythe was resting on his neck. Lu Dong vomited until he was dizzy, as if he was going to vomit out his internal organs. After he finished vomiting, he lay in the pool of blood with a dull look in his eyes and did not get up for a long time. If he could still identify Xiaoqing before, what about now? Xiaoqing sat calmly in the distance, eating his meal. However, there was another person beside him who died without an intact body. Most importantly, he didn't even know how that person died. He only saw him suddenly turn into a pile of flesh and blood, and then there wasn't even a corpse left. This was simply too terrifying and too alarming. Could it be that someone could remotely control other people's lives? If that was really the case, wouldn't it be too terrible? Not only Lu Dong was afraid, but more people were also afraid. They were afraid that they would become the next blood fireworks and explode with a crash. Some people even began to quietly stay away from Lu Dong. They finally realized that the thing behind their backs, who they didn't know whether it was a human or a ghost, seemed to be targeting Lu Dong and his survivors. At least, the ones who died so far were the researchers who had been with Lu Dong before, the survivors of this time's incident. As for the others, whether they were ordinary people or superpowered people, they were not affected. They couldn't help but think more about it. However, they were just guessing. Now, all of them were in a panic. Everyone was afraid that they would be the next person who suddenly died. No matter what, the base at least had to pretend. After this incident, few people still had the appetite to eat. Only a few people came forward and began to check the bodies. Although it was called a body, in fact, there was only a pile of minced meat left. There were also some bones that were not easy to break, but they were even more broken than the pig bones at the bottom of the soup. Those few people who had probably studied medicine before the doomsday were checking the bodies while retching. If they wanted to find something, at least a big piece of the body, and then check if there were any scars or internal injuries. But when they looked at the ground, the biggest piece was no bigger than a fist. How could they check it? No matter how good a doctor was, it was impossible to find any clues from a pile of minced meat. So, they were actually just going through the motions. After checking the bodies, they all shook their heads. No one found anything. One of the people in charge of the base had to say, "First, help President Liu up." Go and change your clothes. A few people come and clean up the scene. So, this person's death could only be left unsettled. What if they didn't find anything? They didn't even know how he died. It couldn't be that he had sat by the fire for too long because of thermal expansion and contraction, right? When Lu Dong was helped up, not only was his hair gray and had lost its luster, but his face was also wrinkled. There was no vitality at all. In the past, although he was old and had wrinkles, he had always been in good spirits. He looked a little younger than his actual age. But now, he was so old that he looked like a candle in the wind. It was as if he would die in the next second. After all, he had suffered 2 consecutive blows in one day. Each time, it was his only remaining companion who had died. Their deaths were extremely tragic. It was as if the group of experimental subjects had really come back for revenge. Even if his heart was made of iron, he couldn't take it anymore. Chapter 292. Now, there was only one person left, the one he had brought out of the institute. Lu Dong had a hunch that after this person died, it would be his turn. He had never felt so powerless, because he had always been in charge of other people's lives. This was the first time that his life was in someone else's hands. He felt like he was standing on the edge of a cliff, with the wind blowing behind him, as if it would push him off the cliff in the next second, but it didn't do anything. It made him so scared that sometimes he even thought that it would be better for him to die earlier, so that he wouldn't have to worry about it anymore. However, after the second person died, they arrived at the base. After entering the base, the rescue personnel organized by each base had to withdraw in batches. The rest of the elites were responsible for escorting Lu Dong to the capital. Since they arrived at the base, nothing had happened for a day and a night. Everyone was relieved. Even the person in charge of the base thought that it must be because the base was heavily guarded that those zombies couldn't get in. However, Lu Dong still yelled every day, saying that when he went to bed at night, he felt that someone was squatting at the head of his bed, quietly watching him. However, when he opened his eyes, that person was gone. At first, the person in charge of the base sent people to guard outside the house. He sent a whole team of 20 people to surround the house like an iron bucket. Even a fly or a mosquito couldn't fly in. However, when he got up the next day, Lu Dong still yelled that someone was quietly watching him in front of his bed at night. At that time, the person in charge of the base was a little annoyed. He sped up and sent all the rescue teams back, then gathered a team of superpowered people above level 3, ready to escort Lu Dong out. However, when he took the first step out of the base, the only researcher beside Lu Dong, who was heavily protected, exploded into a mass of bloody fireworks. This time, it was even closer than the last time. When the flesh and blood flew, it covered Lu Dong's entire body. His face and body were covered in sticky flesh and blood. When he breathed, the thick smell of blood wafted into his nose. Lu Dong had completely broken down. No matter what, he refused to leave the base. He looked around at the people protecting him in panic. He felt a cold gaze fall on him. It was filled with malice and murderous intent. It swept past his throat, his heart. When he tried to find that pair of eyes, he couldn't find them. He really broke down. He crawled back to the base and refused to go out again. The person in charge of the base had no choice but to arrange for many people to guard him. In fact, the person in charge was also a little panicked. How did this person die? There were more than 50 level 3 paranormals present. Chapter 293. All kinds of questions were lingering in everyone's mind, but no one asked. Lu Dong seemed to have gone crazy. He started to shout whenever he saw someone. There was a zombie chasing after him. The zombie was watching him in the dark, wanting to take revenge on him. In order to make Lu Dong feel at ease, the base arranged several brave paranormals to sleep with Lu Dong at night. If someone really squatted at his bedside and watched him quietly as Lu Dong said, then these paranormals would definitely find out. In the middle of the night, several paranormals were awakened by Lu Dong's scream. Someone. Someone. Lu Dong's face was distorted. He grabbed his short gray hair, and his face and eyes were full of horror. Those paranormals were startled. They hurriedly got out of bed, put on a vigilant posture, and turned on the light, but they didn't see anyone. They even searched under the bed, but they didn't even see a footprint, let alone a person. However, Lu Dong insisted that there were people around, and he didn't let them turn off the light. He sat in the corner with the quilt in his arms for the whole night. His spiritual power had been activated until his spiritual power was exhausted. The few paranormals had no choice but to sit with him. But nothing happened for one night, and several nights in a row. They couldn't stand it anymore. They all proposed to change shifts, and the leader of the base completely lost his patience. In his eyes, Lu Dong was now a madman. He didn't know what kind of shameful things he had done. If it weren't for Lu Dong's special identity, he really didn't even want to care about him. So the leader of the base directly refused to see Lu Dong, and just sent someone to take shifts to accompany him at night. Lu Dong was even more desperate. He didn't lie, and he wasn't scared out of his wits. He could clearly feel that someone was standing by his bed every night, looking at him with a bone-chilling gaze. He felt that his eyelids were dead, and he desperately wanted to open his eyes to see what that person looked like, but he couldn't open them. Sometimes he could even feel a cold blade across his neck, leaving a layer of goosebumps on his skin. That feeling was too terrifying. Many times, after he woke up, he didn't want to suffer this torture anymore. He wanted to end his own life, but he didn't have the courage. At this moment, Lu Dong realized that he had lived in vain all these years. The older he got, the more he feared death. Even at this stage, he still did not dare to pick up a knife and end his life. When he completely collapsed, he looked at himself in the mirror. His white hair was very messy, and his face was covered in layers of wrinkles. There were also dark circles under his eyes because he had not slept well for a long time. He was so old that he could not recognize him. At this moment, his mind was in a trance. He could even hear countless people demanding his life. The seeds of hatred sprouted in his body and grew continuously, eating away at his internal organs bit by bit. As if he was possessed, he walked to the highest floor of the base and jumped down. Lu Dong died in the middle of the night. The next morning, someone discovered that he had died at the bottom of the building. Because the building was very high, his face was unrecognizable from the fall. Only the wisp of a relieved smile at the corner of his mouth was chilling. Xiao Qing stood outside the crowd and watched for a long time. She only left when the base sent people to collect the body. This time, all the culprits had been executed. She could finally heave a sigh of relief and put down one of her worries. Next, she just needed to send Qin Zishi home. After returning to the temporary residence, Xiao Qing asked someone to call Qin Zishi over. The group had a celebratory feast together, and then Qin Zishi was ready to leave. Chapter 294. He didn't leave because he wanted to see that group of crazy people die with his own eyes. Now that Lu Dong was dead, it was time for him to go back. After dinner, Xiao Qing discussed with Qin Zishi. Shall I send you back? It's on the way anyway. Why don't we leave tomorrow? Qin Zishi was a little dazed. He was still chewing on biscuits like a little squirrel. There were still some biscuit crumbs on the corner of his pink lips. He looked at Xiao Qing in a daze and licked his lips with his little red tongue. After a while, he reacted and hurriedly said, "It's really not troublesome. I can go back by myself." He had already troubled Xiao Qing a lot. "It's on the way." Xiao Qing couldn't help but touch his hair. Then she said, "I'm going to the capital. Let's go together." Qin Zishi didn't want to be separated from his friends, so he hesitated for a moment and nodded. Although he was still expressionless, he chewed on the biscuits much faster. Even the little ahog on his head stood up a little. Xiao Qing's eyes had a hint of a smile. She rubbed his face. "You can smile at times like this. You don't have to be so serious every day." Qin Zishi puffed up his cheeks and widened his eyes. "I'm not young anymore. This is called dignity. My father is like this. His subordinates are all afraid of him." Several people were amused. They all said, "Yes, he is very dignified." "Very dignified, yes, you're not young anymore." Xiao Qing touched Qin Zishi's head again. Her face was expressionless, but her eyes were full of smiles. Qin Zishi was a little disheartened. He muttered in a low voice, "I'm really not young anymore. In a few months, I'll be 18. When they first met Qin Zishi, They thought that he was an arrogant young master with a bad temper. After spending some time with him, they realized that Qin Zishi was quite cute. Xiaoqing supported her chin with one hand. Watching her friends tease Qin Zishi, she felt that her mentality was much younger. Little Baozi rolled his eyes at the side, thinking of a plan. It seemed that Mama liked Brother Xiaoxi very much. Sister Panpan and the others also liked him very much. Then, if he let Brother Xiaoxi become his family, no one would object, right? Even if they found out that he was the one who did it, it wouldn't matter. Mama loved him so much, so she definitely wouldn't be fierce to him. The next day, they were ready to leave. Before they left, Lu Dong's body was being transported out. At the end of the world, cremation had become very important because corpses could easily become food for mutated animals. It was safer to burn them. Moreover, it could cause diseases such as the plague. Therefore, as long as the conditions were met, most of the corpses would be burned and then buried. Xiaoqing and the others stopped at the door and waited until Lu Dong's body was carried away before they continued on their way. Gu Panpan muttered, "What bad luck." When they went out, they actually went out with Lu Dong's body. If it wasn't bad luck, what was it? Xiaoqing and the others followed the funeral team from a distance. When they reached a fork in the road, several zombies suddenly fell from the sky. Several thick tentacles rolled up Lu Dong's body. Under the cover of several zombies, they quickly escaped. The funeral team was shocked. They had encountered many surprise attacks and ambushes by zombies. Every time, they would lose some of their companions. However, this was the first time that zombies came roaring. They didn't bite or kill people. They just took the body and ran away? Was this a joke? Now, those people really believed that there were zombies secretly following Lu Dong, trying to take revenge. Didn't they see that? Lu Dong was dead, and they didn't even want to let go of his body? Chapter 295. After the experiment subjects did that, Xiaoqing was completely cleared of suspicion. No one would associate it with her anymore. After all, the murderer had appeared. Xiaoqing did not stay for long and left with her friends. She walked to the other side of the fork. After walking for about 10 minutes, Xiaoqing poked Xiao Tong's shoulder. The two of them had a good tacit understanding. Xiaoqing and Xiao Tong looked at each other and understood what Xiao Tong meant. Xiaoqing stopped and said lightly, "Brothers who have been following us secretly, don't hide anymore. Why don't you come out and have a chat? You've been following us all the way. It's quite tiring, isn't it?" Soon, a chuckle came from behind Xiaoqing. Xiaoqing turned around and saw Yin Yi as expected. He had taken off his white coat and changed into a simple casual outfit. There was a group of experimental subjects following him. The group of experimentals were all acting strangely, giving Gu Panpan and the others a fright. They immediately went on alert. Xiaoqing comforted Gu Panpan and the others, then said, "Why are you guys here?" "To thank you." Yin Yi smiled and said, "If it weren't for you, we might not have had the chance to kill Lu Dong, let alone let him be punished like this. I just got rid of a scum. You don't have to thank me." Xiaoqing glanced behind Yin Yi. There was a corpse dragged by a tentacle. She asked, "Where are you going?" "To Jiang City. I'll take them there and settle down." Yin Yi said bitterly, "You've seen what we look like. We can't be accepted by humans. Only zombies can accept us. You're very lucky. If you encounter any problems in the future that you can't solve, you can come to Jiang City to find us. As long as we can help, we won't refuse." Xiaoqing was silent for a moment. No matter what the reason was, no matter who did it, as long as they became like this, they were destined not to be accepted by humans. Xiaoqing looked at the experimental subjects and felt very sad. They used to have a normal life with their own families and friends. However, because of some selfish people, all of this was ruined. They became strange and did not even have the right to be human. However, these half-zombie experimental subjects were more affectionate and righteous than living people. Xiaoqing would rather be friends with them than get along with those scum in human skin. The experimental subject that looked like a baby crawled out of the young man's chest. He looked at Xiaoqing curiously and then quietly reached out his hand. His hand looked as if it had been soaked in water for a long time. It was pale and full of wrinkles. It looked very ugly. Xiaoqing gently held his small hand. The baby immediately smiled. As soon as he smiled, his mouth opened widely. Together with the fetal hair on his head, his extraordinarily large head, and his wrinkled facial features, it was a little scary. Xiaoqing did not dislike him at all. She gently kissed his forehead. The baby was even happier. He held Xiaoqing's hand and then opened his palm. In his palm was a high-level zombie nucleus. It was completely transparent. When the sunlight reflected, it looked very beautiful. The baby stuffed the nucleus into Xiaoqing's palm. How could Xiaoqing accept it? She gently patted the baby's head and then said, "I don't need it. You can take it." The baby was very stubborn. When he was pushed back, he was pushed back. In the end, he looked at Xiaoqing with his big eyes and felt very wronged. Yi could not help but say, "Just take it." On the way here, Xiaoyu specially led us to sweep through a few places just to find a higher-level crystal core for you as a gift. If you don't accept it, he'll be sad for a few days. Chapter 296. Xiaoqing had no choice but to accept it. Then, he took out a bunch of things and gave them to the baby called Xiaoyu. There were milk, drinks that babies could drink, food that Yin Chue made that zombies could eat, some baby clothes, and toys. He gave them all to Xiaoyu. Xiao Baozi was very sensible and contributed a lot of snacks. After giving Xiaoyu a bunch of things, Xiaoqing said, "If there's a need, I'll definitely go to Jiang City. But you guys, be careful. Once people like them were discovered, they would be reduced to experimental subjects again." Yi nodded, and then he said, "I've come here mainly because I need your help with something. Please go ahead." Xiaoqing couldn't help but take some clothes and snacks and gave them to another little girl. Yi said, "I have a younger brother called Yin Zhao. We were separated at the beginning of the apocalypse. At that time, I was in the laboratory, and he and my mother were still living in our hometown. After the apocalypse, I tried many ways to contact him, but I couldn't. If you meet him, please take care of him for me." "Okay." Xiaoqing nodded and said, "Can you describe his appearance to me? Or rather, what are his characteristics? My brother looks very delicate. Ever since he was young, everyone in the family said that he looked like a girl. Every time they said that, he would throw a tantrum. In the end, when he was 14, he got into a car accident and left a very long scar at the corner of his eye. It has never healed. Also, he hates people calling him Xiao Zhao because it sounds like Xiao Zhao from the dragon slaying heaven." When he recalled his brother, Yin Ye's expression became much gentler. He said sincerely, "I'll have to trouble you. But with my current appearance, even if I find him, I can't take care of him. There will always be a way. The most important thing now is to find him. If I meet him, I'll take care of him for you." Xiaoqing couldn't help but pat Yin Ye's shoulder. Yin Ye smiled and said, "We won't delay your journey. We're leaving. If you need anything, you must come to Jiang City to find us." "I will." Xiaoqing nodded. Yin Ye then left with the group of people. As Xiaoyu was leaving, he leaned on the young man's shoulder and looked at Xiaoqing. He had never felt his mother's warmth, but today, he felt it from Xiaoqing. So he was reluctant to leave and a little sad. Xiaoqing's heart ached even more. If she had died back then and little Bun had survived, wouldn't he be as pitiful? Seeing that Xiaoqing was in a bad mood, the little Bun quietly reached out his little paw and held his mommy's hand. Then he whispered, "Mommy, smile." Xiaoqing rubbed her son's face and felt much better in an instant. She continued walking with her friends. No matter what, life had to go on. The most important goal now was to send Qin Zishi back to the capital. Little Bun's temper was like a gust of wind. It came and went quickly. Soon, he happily went to ride the bear. This bear was his new love. Every time he rode it, Yaya's legs would turn to jelly. As an authentic rabbit, Yaya was so scared that she almost peed. When she stood on the bear, her whole body was trembling. However, after so many times, she had gotten used to it. She could even stand on the bear's head and look into the distance with a serious rabbit face. Then, Little Bun slapped her down and she rolled on the ground, crying. While Little Bun was riding the bear, he kept thinking about how to make Qin Zishi his family. Firstly, he needed a chance for his mommy and Qin Zishi to be alone. Secondly, no one could have a chance to interfere. Chapter 297. Then, when the rice was cooked, everything would be settled. The plan was perfect. Little Bun rubbed his chin with a thoughtful expression. Then, he started to worry about how to create this opportunity. Sometimes, whatever one wanted to happen would happen. He was worried about not being able to create an opportunity for Mama and brother Xiaoxi to be alone together, and the opportunity came. At that time, the situation was like this. They had set up camp by the river, and Gu Panpan had suggested that they go to the river to catch some fish. Then, they would go to the vicinity to pick some wild vegetables and catch some prey. Then, they could have a sumptuous picnic. When Little Bun heard that, he raised both his hands and feet in agreement. Originally, Xiaoqing was the main force in this matter, but when it was time to assign tasks, Little Bun started to roll on the ground, saying that his stomach hurt. Thus, he succeeded in making Xiaoqing stay. Then, he hugged Qin Zishi's leg and refused to let him go. So Qin Zishi stayed too. Almost everyone else scattered, and even Xiao Tong followed Gu Panpan and Alan to pick wild vegetables. When they saw this, they let Xiaoqing and Qin Zishi stay behind to accompany Little Bun. In any case, with Xiaoqing's strength, she definitely wouldn't encounter any danger. Once those people left, Little Bun started to think about how to do it. He secretly thought of a way, and then very cleverly whined, "Mama, I want to drink milk." Xiaoqing rubbed Little Bun's head. "Your stomach doesn't hurt anymore? I'll warm it up for you. Mama is the best." Little Bun grinned. After watching Xiaoqing leave, he said to Qin Zishi, "Brother Xiaoxi, can you help me look for Yiya? It ran out again?" Qin Zishi nodded with a serious expression and then also went out to look for it. When the two of them left, he secretly took out a flower from his little sunny pouch. The flower had red petals and was already somewhat dried up. He had once secretly eavesdropped on the conversation between the stall owner and the buyer. The stall owner said that this flower was called the 7 Days Acacia. Not only was its medicinal effect particularly strong, but it also did not harm the body. Even a woman could cling onto a man. As long as one petal was enough, raw rice could be cooked. He couldn't understand the first few sentences. He could only understand 2 sentences. The first sentence was that it wouldn't hurt the body, which meant that it wouldn't hurt his mama and brother Xiaoxi. The second sentence was that what's done cannot be undone. Didn't he want the raw rice to be cooked? That way, brother Xiaoxi wouldn't leave the spicy food. Therefore, he secretly took one and threw a crystal stone into the stall owner's box in embarrassment. Only then did he sneak away. He had to succeed in one go. Little Bun sneakily climbed down from the bed and walked to the table barefooted. Then, he secretly stuffed the flower petals into the kettle. He was afraid that the effect wouldn't be good enough, so he stuffed the whole flower in. After stuffing it in, the Little Bun got into the bed guiltily and turned around, waiting for Xiaoqing to come back. What if her mother found out? Would she be angry? What if she didn't want him anymore? Just as the Little Bun was letting his imagination run wild, Xiaoqing came in with a bottle of milk. Qin Zishi also came in with Yaya in her arms. The Little Bun immediately raised his little heart and was very nervous. It wasn't until Xiaoqing passed the milk bottle to him that he said softly, "Mama, you drink too?" Xiaoqing patted the Little Bun's head and felt that her son had healed her. She chuckled and said, "Mama doesn't drink milk. Drinking water is enough." "Then, Mama, I'll get you some water," the Little Bun said in a childish voice. "Don't you have a stomachache? Don't bother yourself." Xiaoqing knocked the Little Bun's head. Then, she also felt that she couldn't let Qin Zishi just sit there, so she got up and poured a glass of water. The Little Bun stared at the glass of water eagerly. His heart was beating like thunder. Was it going to succeed? Chapter 298. What's that smell? Xiaoqing lowered her head and sniffed. There was a faint floral fragrance in the water. It was very light, with a hint of indescribable sweetness. The Little Bun almost jumped up. His eyes were as wide as a cow's. He rolled his eyes and rolled on the bed. "Mama, my stomach hurts." Xiaoqing was not in the mood to find out where the fragrance came from. She quickly rubbed her son's stomach. Qin Zishi came over with Yaya in her arms. She frowned and said, "Did he eat something wrong? Did he have a stomachache?" Others might not know, but Xiaoqing knew very well that the little bun's body was half human and half zombie. How could he have a stomachache so easily? She rubbed the little bun's stomach and connected the dots in her mind. Actually, with her intelligence, she could have found something wrong long ago, but she was a mother. When her child was sick, her mind was already in a mess. That was why she did not discover the little bun's clumsy lie. Xiaoqing only realized it when Qin Zishi spoke. She looked at the little bun and then looked at Qin Zishi. She then said softly, "Little Shi, can I trouble you to boil some water? I want to fill a hot water bag for the baby." Qin Zishi agreed. She put Yayo on the bed and went out. The little bun had already sensed that something was wrong. He held the quilt very nervously. Xiaoqing did not say anything. She just looked at him quietly. The little bun curled up again. He looked up at Xiaoqing guiltily. Xiaoqing asked, "Stomach hurts?" The little bun nodded and then shook his head quietly. His pitiful appearance made people feel sorry for him. Xiaoqing held back the pain in her heart. She squatted down and asked in a low voice, "What's in the water?" The little bun trembled and stuffed himself into the quilt. Xiaoqing poked him and asked again, "What's in the water?" The little bun stuffed himself into the blanket and refused to raise his head until Xiaoqing asked for the third time, "What's in the water?" Only then did little Baozi raise his head. His eyes were red. He sobbed and said, "The cook. What are you cooking?" Xiaoqing hardened her heart and continued to ask. The little bun sniffled and said, "It's already been cooked." As he spoke, he started to cry. "Baby doesn't want Brother Xiaoxi to leave. I don't want to be separated from Brother Xiaoxi. I want to be family with Brother Xiaoxi. Once the rice is cooked, Brother Xiaoxi won't leave." Xiaoqing's mouth twitched. She finally understood what little Baozi meant by cooking rice. She was actually very angry because little Baozi had done all this behind her back and even schemed against her. This made her feel a little sad. She had risked her life to give birth to a son and raised a son. Now, he wanted to scheme against her. Not only did her heart feel cold, but it also hurt. But seeing little Baozi crying so sadly, Xiaoqing began to think about her own problems. Did she do something wrong? She thought that she had protected little Baozi well. She thought that she could let little Baozi grow up healthily and happily. But she forgot that he was a child. Children needed a childhood. But little Baozi followed her everywhere every day. Especially at the beginning of the apocalypse, he was always on the move and had no fixed place to stay. Danger lurked everywhere. Every day, he walked the line between life and death. He didn't have any toys, friends, or playmates. But he was obedient and sensible. He never asked her for anything or made any requests. His only friend was a rabbit. So, he always treated Yaya very well. When he got Yaya, he treated her like a treasure. Chapter 299. Did she do something wrong? So the little bun was not happy at all. Seeing the little bun cry so sadly, Xiaoqing's heart ached. She pursed her lips, but didn't know what to do. Should she keep Qin Zishi? No, Qin Zishi had his own home and family. He had to go back eventually. Xiaoqing was upset and didn't say a word. However, the little bun misunderstood. He thought that Xiaoqing was angry and didn't want him anymore. At that time, he didn't even dare to cry. He sniffed softly. His nose and eyes were red. Although there were no tears, he looked very pitiful. Xiaoqing looked down and saw the little bun sticking out his round, white, and tender but with a pitiful expression that said, "Oh my God, Mama doesn't want me anymore. What should I do? I'm scared." The little bun's nose and eyes were all red. She smiled immediately and lowered her head to kiss the little bun's nose. Then she said, "It's Mama's fault. I didn't think about your feelings. Do you like Xiaoxi a lot?" The little bun hesitated for a long time. On one hand, he was afraid that his mother would be angry, but on the other hand, he didn't want to go against his own thoughts. After all, he really liked Brother Xiaoxi. After a long, long time, the little bun nodded slightly. Then he pounced forward and hugged Xiaoqing's neck. "Mama, don't abandon baby. Baby will be good in the future and won't do bad things anymore. Don't give baby away to others. I won't. Xiao Qing held the little bun's pitiful face and kissed it a few times. Then she said very seriously, Baby, Mama is wrong this time, but you're also wrong. First, don't drug others casually in the future. That's wrong. Understand? Secondly, no matter what you want to do, you have to ask for other people's opinions. It's wrong to force others to do something. Just like this time, if Mom didn't find out about your little trick and really fell for it, Mom would be very sad. It's because Mom trusted you that she was deceived by you. Your brother Xiaoxi would also be very sad because what you did was a kind of betrayal to him. Then, the two of us wouldn't like you anymore. Do you understand? The little bun hurriedly nodded and sobbed. Baby knows it's wrong. I won't do it again. But Mama, I really like brother Xiaoxi. Baby wants to play with brother Xiaoxi forever. Baby wants to live with brother Xiaoxi. I don't want brother Xiaoxi to go back. Xiao Qing rubbed the little bun's cheeks and said, After we send Xiaoxi back to the capital and then come back to deal with the matters in S City, I will discuss with Pan Pan and the others to settle down in the capital. Then, when I have nothing to do, I can go visit brother Xiaoxi, okay? The little bun hurriedly nodded and wriggled in Xiao Qing's arms. He was still young, and his three views were still in a state of development. He relied completely on what he saw and heard to determine the solution when he encountered problems. However, none of the people around him were good people. Any one of them was at the level of a devil, such as Yin Qiue, Xiao Qing, and even Gu Panpan. They were all people who killed decisively. Therefore, the little bun's character today was independent and decisive. He was too independent and decisive, and without proper guidance, he didn't know what was right and what was wrong. Fortunately, Xiao Qing discovered this in time. Otherwise, in a few years, a little devil might have appeared out of nowhere. Moreover, the little bun's superpower was very outstanding. It was just that there were too many strong people around him, so he just needed to enjoy being protected. Xiao Qing deliberately protected him. Otherwise, the little bun would also be an outstanding superpower user. Chapter 300. His devouring ability was very effective against humans, zombies, and mutant animals. As long as they were not much stronger than him, they would be devoured. Moreover, he could only digest a part of the energy he devoured. Although he had to expel the rest, it could be used as energy for his attacks. It was scary to think of it this way. After comforting Little Bun, Qin Zishi came in with a kettle and asked softly, "Where is the hot water bag?" To be honest, Xiao Qing was a little embarrassed, especially when she knew that her son wanted her to have sex with Qin Zishi. But now was not the time to be embarrassed. She had to cover up Little Bun's lie. So she found a hot water bag, poured some water in it, and gave it to Little Bun. Little Bun instantly understood and hurriedly hugged the hot water bag. When he looked at Qin Zishi, he still felt a little embarrassed and guilty. After Qin Zishi put down the kettle, he sat awkwardly at the side, his gaze clearly lingering on the cup on the table. Xiao Qing immediately felt even more embarrassed. Qin Zishi had clearly heard her conversation with Little Bun. Although she didn't know how much he had heard, he clearly knew what Little Bun had done. Otherwise, he wouldn't have appeared so awkward. The atmosphere in the entire space was very awkward. Fortunately, the group of people who went out to hunt came back. The three of them secretly breathed a sigh of relief and ended the awkward atmosphere. The main chef was still Yin Hanqing, followed by Xiao Qing, Gu Panpan, and the other girls. They were responsible for washing and cutting the vegetables. The men were responsible for handling the game. They caught a lot of game, including many fish. Crucian carps could be used to make soup, carps could be used to make sweet and sour soup, and small ones could be fried directly. In short, it was a very sumptuous lunch. Everyone ate happily. After lunch, Xiao Qing poked Little Bun. Little Bun was a little embarrassed. He hugged Yiya and secretly followed Qin Zishi, ready to apologize. Xiao Qing was afraid that Little Bun's hard-earned companion would be gone because of his one mistake, so she urged him to apologize. Although the Little Bun really went overboard this time, Xiao Qing believed that as long as he apologized sincerely, Qin Zishi would forgive him. After that, Xiao Qing went back to her room. Once she was back, Xiaoqing was stunned because Yin Shiyue was drinking water at the table. Xiaoqing wanted to curse out loud because the atmosphere was too awkward. When everyone came back, Xiaoqing heaved a sigh of relief and forgot about the little bun's drug. So, the water that Yin Shiyue drank was drugged. When Yin Shiyue saw Xiaoqing coming back, she put down the cup and licked her lips. Where did you get the water? It's a little sweeter than ordinary well water and river water. Do you want to pack a little more so that you can drink it when you run out of water in the future? Xiaoqing was speechless. She didn't know how to face Yin Shiyue, so she directly ignored him and opened the kettle. As she expected, there was a little red flower floating in the water. The flower was already a little withered. Now that it was full of water, it stretched its petals and floated up and down. It looked quite beautiful. However, this didn't change the fact that it was an aphrodisiac flower. In other words, Yin Shiyue was drugged. Xiaoqing was so annoyed that she wanted to scratch her head. After Yin Shiyue was drugged, she would definitely be the antidote. Otherwise, with Yin Shiyue's temper, he would never find another woman even if he wanted to die. Chapter 301. Xiaoqing was extremely annoyed. She glanced at Yin Shiyue from the corner of her eye and suddenly found that his eyes were full of slyness. She suddenly thought of something. What did Yin Shiyue do? He was a researcher. He had a deep understanding of mutant plants, mutant animals, paranormals, and zombies. How could he not notice that there was something wrong with the water? Even if he didn't notice it when he poured it, how could he not notice it after drinking it? He could even tell her with relish that the water was really sweet. What was that saying again? The more you want to hide, the easier it is to be exposed. This was clearly a case of trying to cover up. A clever person may be the victim of his own cleverness. After thinking it through, Xiaoqing was no longer annoyed. She clapped her hands and looked at Yin Shiyue with a faint smile. Then she said, "If you like it, you can drink the whole pot." Yin Shiyue was dumbfounded. The script wasn't written like this. It was different from what he imagined. In fact, when he entered the house, he felt that something was wrong, but he didn't think too much about it. After all, it was no different from being in his own house. If he still needed to be on guard in his own house, then there was no point in living. Then he sat down and poured a glass of water. When the glass was about to touch his lips, he realized that something was wrong. There was something wrong with the water. Yin Shiyue's research on various mutant plants was very profound. He sniffed carefully and found that the water had an aphrodisiac smell. He went crazy at that time. In Xiaoqing's house, he found water with an aphrodisiac smell. What else was there to say? Someone must have tried to drug Xiaoqing. How could this be tolerated? This couldn't be tolerated. However, Yin Shiyue's thoughts were in a whirl. He quickly considered this point. Looking at the situation, Xiaoqing shouldn't have been drugged yet. Otherwise, she would have gone crazy by now. In other words, he was the first person to touch this glass of water. Then it would be easy. He could drink the water, and then, maybe he could directly pursue Xiaoqing. To be honest, since he abandoned everything and followed Xiaoqing to the S-City survivor base, Yin Shiyue began to lose confidence. There were too many competitors and threats everywhere. He thought that he was a very outstanding man, but none of the men around Xiaoqing were worse than him. And it wasn't the first time that he confessed to Xiaoqing. And balls. He didn't get any response. No wonder he lost confidence. Imagine a woman's eyes. He zhengz's eyes. It would be strange if he had confidence. This was an opportunity. Yin Shiyue was sure that if he was really drugged, Xiaoqing would never leave him alone. As long as they had sex again, even if it was for the sake of responsibility, Xiaoqing would accept him. At that time, he could talk to Xiaoqing, and he could almost get her. This was probably his only chance, and it was very tempting. Yin Shiyue held the glass of water for half an hour. He was so hesitant that his forehead was sweating. In the end, he gave up. Yin Shiyue was a very proud person. This kind of pride was not only shown in his way of doing things, but was also engraved in his bones. He knew that even if he used this kind of despicable method to get together with Xiaoqing, it would still leave her with regrets and estrangement in her heart. That was what he disdained to do. Even if Xiaoqing refused to accept him in the end, he wouldn't do such a thing. However, Yin Shiyue still drank a little. It wasn't much. At most, it would let him do it for a while. Then Yin Shiyue sat upright and still, waiting for Xiaoqing to find out. Then he could take the opportunity to act coquettishly and take advantage of her. Maybe he could get Xiaoqing's loving touch. Ahem, to improve their relationship. Chapter 302. Yin Shiyue threw a tantrum and refused to go out. Since that day, Yin Shiyue had been holed up in the tent. When they were on the road, he would crawl into the back seat and turn his back to everyone. It was very awkward. Xiaoqing couldn't help but want to laugh. Then she touched her chin. It seemed that she hadn't reminded him before. After he embarrassed himself, he really lost his temper. This little temper was quite stubborn. Xiaoqing began to think about how to coax Yin Shiyue, who was throwing a tantrum, back. Probably because he had done something wrong before. Little Bun was especially attentive, obedient, and well-behaved these days. During lunch, he would often hold a pile of snacks or drinks and distribute them everywhere. Qin Zishi was a bit embarrassed and angry. Later, he thought it through. Little Bun was just a child. Why was he angry with him? In addition, Little Bun sincerely apologized, so he forgave him. The two of them stuck together all day long. This time, the journey to the capital was quite long. The group often stopped and walked. When they saw good scenery, they would stop and have a picnic. They lived like immortals. It didn't seem like they were struggling in the end of the world. Instead, it was more like they were traveling. Then, after many days of traveling, the group finally arrived at the capital. The capital was as bustling as before. From afar, they could see many people going in and out of the gate. Probably because of bad luck, when the group just arrived at the gate of the capital and got out of the car, before they had time to look at the gate, a badly mutilated corpse fell under their feet. Xiaoqing's group was stunned. First, they didn't expect that there would be someone who dared to be so presumptuous at the gate of the capital. Second, they didn't expect that they would be so lucky. The corpse fell right next to Xiaoqing's feet. The blood and dust splattered, staining Xiaoqing's trousers red. Bad luck. Yin Shiyue couldn't stand it anymore. He tugged at Xiaoqing, took out a tissue, and half knelt by the side to wipe the stain on Xiaoqing's trousers. Xiaoqing didn't care about the stain. She pulled Yin Shiyue and said, "What, you're not angry with me anymore?" Yin Shiyue snorted. He held Xiaoqing's hand and said, "Who told you to watch me make a fool of myself? You didn't remind me. Yes, I was wrong." Xiaoqing touched his head. Her eyes curved, and she looked very gentle. Yin Shiyue didn't have any temper. He couldn't wait to hug Xiaoqing, find a place where there was no one else, and make love to her. Dummy Air was unwilling. He came over from the other side, grabbed Xiaoqing's other hand, and glared at Yin Shiyue angrily. Lin Qifan felt his entire body stiffen. He could no longer shift his gaze away. He stared fixedly at Xiaoqing, carefully sizing her up. Those familiar eyes, that familiar gentleness, everything about her. Am I dreaming? While Lin Qifan was frozen, the people beside him walked over angrily. The girl pointed at the corpse on the ground and said, "How dare you stain my dress? Drag it back, cut it up and feed it to the dogs." Xiaoqing looked up and saw several people crowding around a young girl. The young girl's eyes were filled with arrogance, and her entire body was filled with an air of arrogance. Beside her, there was an even younger girl. She was battered and exhausted, and her body was riddled with wounds. She was being held down by a man, and tears streamed down her face as she looked at the corpse on the ground, constantly struggling. But she was just a weak girl. How could she struggle against an adult man? Moreover, he was a psychic. Chapter 303. Xiaoqing did not care about this kind of thing. There were too many injustices in the world. She had to find out who was right and who was wrong. Then, she would take care of it until the end. It was too tiring. A group of thugs rushed over and dragged the corpse from the ground. At this time, Xiaoqing discovered that he was still breathing. However, his breathing was very weak. If he was hit a little harder, he would really go to hell. Let go of my brother. If you have any problems, come at me. The girl kept struggling. The pampered girl was probably annoyed by listening to her. She turned around and slapped her. Bitch, shut up. Isn't it easy to die? In a while, I will make sure that you can't die even if you want to. In Jingdu, no one dares to steal my man. The girl was slapped until her head was crooked. Her face quickly swelled up. She bit her lips tightly and stared at the girl who called herself Lu Xian. Then, she looked at Lin Qifan with contempt and spat out a mouthful of blood. Pay. On the other side, Xiaoqing also saw Lin Qifan. Her eyes were filled with disgust and murderous intent. If they weren't at the gates of the capital, she really wanted to rush up and stab this man. Hiding the anger in her eyes, Xiaoqing waved her hand. Let's go. Gu Panpan could not bear it. However, she knew that the ones who died the fastest in the apocalypse were not the weak, but the saints. It was not that you could not be kind, but you could not be kind. Sometimes, the people you saved might backstab you. She saw this more clearly than anyone else. She remembered that at the beginning of the apocalypse, they were trapped in the city. After being trapped for a period of time, they ran out of ammunition and food. They did not have anything to eat or drink. Finally, the army came to rescue them. There were about 30 soldiers in that small group. They saved these people and gave them food. However, because the soldiers controlled the food and only gave them food every day, these bastards were instigated by others to steal their guns and food. The chaotic noises and the smell of blood attracted countless zombies. In the end, whether it was soldiers or refugees, they all died in the mouths of the zombies. Gu Chuan was smart. He covered Gu Panpan's mouth and hid her in the storeroom. That was how they escaped. From that time onwards, Gu Panpan was very clear that without absolute strength, one should not save others. She could be kind and have her own bottom line, but she could not be careless and be kind. Otherwise, not only would she die, but her family and friends would also die. Therefore, although she could not bear it, Gu Panpan would only say it. She would not really do anything. The group of people handed the car over to the security guard for inspection and prepared to go in. Xiaoqing had just taken a few steps forward when Lin Qifan came up to her. His face was flushed from excitement, and his breathing was rapid. After stopping Xiaoqing for a long time, he said softly, "Qing?" Xiaoqing felt disgusted. She did not know how this man could be so shameless. When he cheated, did he consider that he already had a wife and children? When he allowed his mistress to kill her and Little Bun, did he consider the relationship between husband and wife? Now that she was lucky to not die, this man came over with an expression as deep as the sea. What did he want? What should she do? She really wanted to slap Lin Qifan's head and make his brain splatter everywhere. Xiaoqing took a deep breath and chuckled. Do you know me? When she spoke, she had a smile on her face, but her eyes were cold. Yin Qiue's reaction was the fastest. He clung onto Xiaoqing's lower body like a boneless snake and rested his head on Xiaoqing's shoulder. His breath smelled like orchids and was exceptionally charming. Qing, do you know this man? Chapter 304. Erdai didn't fall behind. He clung onto Xiaoqing's other side and rubbed his face against Xiaoqing's cheek. Xiaoqing rubbed Yin Qiue's chin with her fingertips and said lazily, I don't know her. Lin Qifan's expression immediately turned ugly. He couldn't even hold back his smile. At this moment, the pampered girl walked over. Her eyes were filled with jealousy. Qifan, who are you talking to now? Lin Qifan didn't know why, but he didn't want Xiaoqing to see him and Lu Xian being so close. He couldn't help but take a step back. Lu Xian reached out her hand and didn't manage to put it on his shoulder. Lu Xian immediately became angry. However, she wasn't angry at Lin Qifan. Instead, she was angry at Xiaoqing. She raised her chin and her eyes were filled with arrogance. Her tone was full of disdain. Where did this shameless woman come from? Seducing other people's men on the street. I've never seen a living bitch before. Come, let me see. Xian air. Lin Qifan awkwardly tugged at Lu Xian's sleeve. This made her even angrier. She gritted her teeth and said, First it's this woman, then it's that woman. Lin Qifan, today, I want to ask you, Which one is real and which one is fake? What excuses do you have to tell me? Lin Qifan looked at the disdain in Xiao Qing's eyes and felt extremely awkward, especially when Xiao Qing leaned against Yan Qiue. She chuckled and said, "You're right about one thing. I haven't seen a living bitch before, but I've seen one today. Let me teach you something. The man you treat like a treasure might not even be worth as much as a blade of grass in other people's eyes. No, he might not even be worth as much as a pile of shit. Especially a man like that. If you give him to me for free, I'll be disgusted." Yin Qiue liked Xiao Qing's arrogant and cute look the most. He leaned over and kissed the corner of Xiao Qing's mouth. Then, with a coquettish glance, he said lazily, "Darling, why do you have to lower yourself to their level? They're a match made in heaven." Erdai also leaned over and kissed Xiao Qing's left cheek. He nodded seriously. Although he had always hated Yin Qiue, what he said today was still reasonable. This time, not only did Lin Qifan's face turn ugly, but Lu Xian's face also turned ugly. She came from a good family, and even after the apocalypse, she had never suffered. This was the first time someone had scolded her so directly. For a moment, she actually didn't come back to her senses. Her pale little face didn't know how to retaliate. After a long while, he said as if he had gone mad, "Tear this bitch's mouth for me." And the two men beside her. Qin Zishi had been watching from the side for a long time. Although he didn't understand the whole story, he could roughly figure it out. Xiao Qing was his friend. How could he allow others to bully her? At that time, Qin Zishi took a step forward, and Big Bear roared and slapped the two paranormals away. Big Bear's size was really scary. After slapping the two paranormals away, it stood behind Qin Zishi obediently, looking a little simple and honest. Qin Zishi looked at Lu Xian with a serious face and said coldly, "Say it again. What do you want?" At that moment, Lu Xian was close to a half-crazy state. She was so angry that her eyes turned red. She wanted to bite Xiao Qing to death. "I'm going to tear this bitch's mouth. And you guys." After saying that, she suddenly realized that Qin Zishi looked a little familiar. Then, she took a closer look at Qin Zishi, and her face turned even paler. Qin Zishi was famous in Jingdu because his father was awesome. The Qin family was a traditional family of generals. Before the apocalypse, they were very powerful in the Celestial Empire. At their peak, they had 3 commanders in one family. Chapter 305. It was as if they controlled an entire military region. The Qin family's descendants, whether they were in business, politics, or the military, were all famous. After the apocalypse, the Qin family joined forces with several powerful families to build a survivor base in the capital. In other words, the Qin family was one of the few powerful families in the capital. No matter how powerful Lu Xian's family was, they couldn't be compared to Qin Zishi's family. Those who had some family background had been taught early on to look at the photos of those who could not be trifled with. Although they were foppish, they should at least have some insight. She did not expect that she would kick an iron plate. Xiao Qing looked a little tired. She said softly, "Forget it. You're finally back. Let's stop here." After saying that, she turned to look at Lu Xian. "Let go of the 2 people in your hands and disappear from our sight immediately." She did not say anything threatening, and her expression was very cold. However, Lu Xian did not say anything. She gritted her teeth and said, "Let him go. Retreat." She then left in a hurry with her people. Lin Qifan glanced at Xiao Qing again before he turned around and left with Lu Xian. The girl was thrown to the ground. She scrambled forward and hugged her brother. Then, she burst into tears. Her brother was still hanging on by his last breath and was about to die. Xiao Qing didn't like trouble, but she was willing to help if she could. Xiao Qing took out some medicine and gave it to the girl. She patted her shoulder and didn't say anything. The girl was very grateful and kept thanking Xiao Qing. Even though she knew that she couldn't save her brother, she was still very grateful to Xiao Qing. She and her brother came to the capital from another place. Her brother had some special abilities, but she was just an ordinary person. However, her brother protected her very well. When they first came to the capital, they had no relatives. The girl met Lin Qifan by accident. Lin Shifan looked like a decent person and was good at sweet-talking. He deliberately got close to the girl and helped her a lot. Naturally, she let down her guard. Lin Shifan claimed that he did not have a girlfriend and wanted to pursue the girl. The girl was a reserved girl, so she did not agree. Who knew that today, her brother had completed a mission and returned to the city. She went to the entrance to pick him up and coincidentally met Lin Shifan. The two of them had just chatted for a while when Lu Xian came over. Then, Lu Xian said that she seduced Lin Shifan. The man who swore that he didn't have a girlfriend and that he liked her didn't even dare to say a word. The girl immediately understood that Lin Shifan was trying to cheat on her, but Lu Xian found out about it. However, Lu Xian was an unreasonable person. If it wasn't for Xiao Qing, she and her brother might have died at the door. Xiao Qing helped the girl carry her brother into the city. She only left after sending them to their home. After leaving, Qin Zishi said excitedly, "Why don't you come to my house? You've taken good care of me before. Now that I'm the host, I'll do my best." Xiao Qing originally wanted to refuse, because she knew that Qin Zishi's family wasn't simple. However, when she saw the excitement in Qin Zishi's eyes and the pitiful look on the little bun's face, she agreed. Okay. Qin Zishi secretly made a yes sign, then brought Xiao Qing to his house. The group of people walked and walked until they reached the exclusive residential area of the capital. Xiao Qing also understood why Lu Xian was afraid of Qin Zishi. It turned out that Qin Zishi was the son of an official. Chapter 306. However, she made friends with Qin Zishi, not his family, so she didn't care about it. As soon as Qin Zishi returned, Lan and the others dispersed in an instant. A middle-aged man who looked like a butler came over and said, "Young master, you're back? I'll go and inform." "You don't have to inform anyone. Dad and the others are very busy. Don't let them know. I'll bring my friends back to play. When Dad comes back tonight, I'll tell him." Qin Zishi waved his hand and said, "Uncle Wang, I've gained a lot on this trip. They're all at the door. Help me settle them down. Don't let anyone get close. Ada and the others are very fierce." The butler said helplessly, "Okay, young master." Then he went out. Qin Zishi immediately led Xiao Qing and the others inside excitedly. As he walked, he said, "I live with Dad and Grandpa now. My dad is very fierce, but Grandpa is very nice. He will definitely like the babies and Sister Qing very much." Xiao Qing didn't say anything. She just listened to his introduction with a smile. "In front of us is our garden. My grandpa likes flowers very much. He collected a lot of seeds and planted them many times. Some of them are alive, and some of them can't be planted, but the garden is still very beautiful." As soon as Qin Zishi returned home, he became much more lively. "Further ahead is our family's training ground. My dad and grandpa are both soldiers. When they have nothing to do, they like to do military boxing or exercise. They don't like to build a gym, so they built an open-air training ground. There is still a lot of equipment in it." Qin Zishi led a group of people forward. As they were walking, they suddenly saw an old man carrying a birdcage. The old man's hair and beard were white, and he was wearing a tang suit. As soon as he saw Qin Zishi, he quickly walked over. "My dear grandson, I missed you so much. Come and let me see if you've lost weight." Qin Zishi hurried forward and said honestly, "I'm back, Grandpa." The old man pinched Qin Zishi's arm and said in an exaggerated tone, "Oh, you haven't lost weight at all. You've gained so much weight." Qin Zishi's face was a little red. He had been fed by Xiao Qing and the others for the past 2 days, so he had gained more than just a little weight. He quickly changed the topic. "Grandpa, I brought my friends here to play this time. Let me introduce them to you. These are my friends." Then, he introduced Xiao Qing and the others to him, with the emphasis on his little friend, Little Bun. The little bun was a bit nervous. He raised his head to look at the old man and tried his best to make his bun face look serious. "Grandpa and I am baby." The old man lowered his head and looked at Little Bun. Little Bun immediately became even more nervous. His bun-like face puffed up. The old man didn't say anything, and neither did Little Bun. It had to be said that this old man looked quite fierce, especially his eyes. When he glared, coupled with his broad forehead, heroic face, and the scar on his face, he was definitely the kind that could stop children from crying at night. The old man and the little boy looked at each other for 2 minutes. Then, the little bun sat on the ground and began to cry. The old man's hands immediately went numb. He wanted to reach out to support the little bun, but he was afraid that the little bun would cry even harder. Shinzishi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "Grandpa, don't scare him." He helped little bun up and comforted him. Only then did little bun stop crying. However, he kept burrowing into his mother's arms. He looked quite frightened. The old man was a bit dispirited. Actually, he quite liked little bun, especially when he looked at little bun's chubby little face. He even wanted to poke it a few times. However, he had been disliked by children for a long time. When a child met him, 9 of them would be scared away. It wasn't easy for him to meet his grandson's little friend. He also liked him, but he had actually scared him to tears. The old man was a bit upset. Was he that scary? Shinzishi was very familiar with his grandfather. He patted his forehead helplessly and said, "Don't stare at baby with an expressionless face. No matter how brave he is, he will still be frightened by you." Xiao Qing smiled and said, "Old man, perhaps you can try smiling." Then, the old man grinned. His already ferocious face became even scarier. Xiao Qing was speechless. Chapter 307. Noticing Xiao Qing and the others' expressions, the old man felt wronged and quickly put on a serious face. He felt hurt again. Then the little bun reached out his hand and touched the old man's waist. He wanted to touch the old man's hair because his mother often touched his head when he was sad. However, he was too short, so he could only touch the old man's waist even if he stood on tiptoe. The old man's expression didn't change, but there was joy in his eyes. He tried hard to suppress the corners of his mouth, afraid that he would scare the little bun away if he suddenly smiled. Then the old man secretly grabbed the little bun's tender hand, but the little bun didn't pull his hand away. His thoughts were simple. This was his friend's grandfather, so he had to show him some respect. Didn't he see how sad his friend's grandfather was just now? If his grandfather was sad, his friend would be sad too. After the little bun didn't pull his hand away, the old man was obviously in a much better mood. When he looked at Xiao Qing and the others again, his gaze became gentler. "Xiaoxi, are these your friends?" Shinzishi nodded and introduced Xiao Qing and the others to the old man one by one. To be honest, the old man had never heard of Xiao Qing and the others' names. Although he didn't show any expression, it was obvious that he was listening very carefully and really remembered their names. Xiao Qing's impression of the old man improved instantly. It was obvious that the old man treated them so seriously only because they were his grandson's friends. Especially when Xiao Qing was introduced. When the old lady heard that the little bun was Xiao Qing's son, she said 2 words to Xiao Qing for the first time. "Very good." Then he said, "Don't stand at the door. Let's go in. Since we're all Xiaoxi's friends, there's no need to be shy." Then he led the way inside. Shinzishi's house wasn't very luxurious. It was even a little low-key, but it was obvious that it had a strong foundation. In short, Xiao Qing liked this style of decoration very much. She couldn't help taking a few more glances at it. After the group of people sat down on the sofa in the living room, a nanny immediately came up to pour tea. When the old man sat down, he specifically let the little bun sit beside him and even instructed the nanny to bring some candy over. There was a big box of candies. There were chocolates, soft candies, and milk candies. In short, they were all things that children like to eat. The old man looked at the little bun kindly and asked, "What do you like to eat? If you like them, I'll give them all to you." Little bun wasn't afraid at all, but he wasn't greedy either. He only took 2 pieces of chocolate and a piece of soft candy. Then, he looked at the soft candy man and wavered between Sun Wukong and Chang'e. In the end, he gritted his teeth and took Sun Wukong. The little bun was too obedient. The old man immediately liked him even more. He pushed the box away. "If you like them, then take them all." Little Baozi shook his head and said softly, "Your brother Xiaoxi's grandfather, so Bao Bao won't treat you as an outsider. But one shouldn't be too greedy. This is enough for me." The old man nodded. It seemed like he wanted to laugh, but he forcefully suppressed the corners of his mouth. He was probably afraid that he would scare the little bun into crying again. One could see the upbringing of their parents by looking at their children. Therefore, the old man's impression of Xiaoqing became even better. He stood up reluctantly and said, "If I'm around, you won't be able to relax. Have fun. I'm going upstairs first." Little Bowsy hesitated for a moment. Then he tugged at the old man's sleeve and said, "Grandpa, stay and play with us. I like Grandpa." Yin Hanqing remained silent until everyone stopped talking. Then he saluted. "Sir." The old man carefully looked at Yin Hanqing and slapped his thigh. "I know you. You're known as the Manchurian Tiger of the North China military region." Yin Hanqing did not feel anything because of the praise. He even felt that he was not qualified to say his number. But obviously, the old man remembered it very clearly. They changed from chatting casually before to talking about military life and so on. The other few people couldn't get a word in. When Qin Zixi's father came back, he saw his old man with his arm around a young man's shoulder and chatting happily with another good-looking woman. Chapter 309. His jaw dropped to the ground. Was this his father, who always wore a straight face and looked like he wanted to eat someone? Was he hallucinating because he had been too busy for the past 2 days? Until Qin Zixi said crisply, "Dad, you're back?" Father Qin finally reacted. Everything in front of him wasn't a hallucination. His father was really hugging a young man's shoulder and chatting with a girl. Also, there was a cute child sitting beside him. His father, who never had much luck with children, was actually sitting with a child, and the child wasn't even scared to tears. Oh my God, he just didn't come home for a day. Why did it feel like the end of the world? No, it was already the end of the world. Father Qin felt that he was already speaking incoherently. He hit his head and walked over. "Xiaoxi, you're back? Dad, you're in a good mood today." The old man immediately glared at his son. "Don't come over. Move your face away. Don't scare my baby." As he spoke, he pulled the little bun closer to his chest. Father Qin's mouth twitched. "You're always the one scaring other people's children, okay? Also, this is someone else's baby, not your baby." However, Father Qin didn't dare to complain. Although he was a powerful official to outsiders, in his own home, in his father's eyes, he would always be a child who hadn't grown up. As long as he provoked his father, he would be beaten up. Moreover, he would be beaten up on the butt, not giving him any face at all. 2 days ago, he provoked his father. Now, he didn't dare to use any strength when sitting down. What if he accidentally provoked his father again and beat him up in front of so many people? How embarrassing would that be? How would he live if word got out? Thus, Papa Qin calmly took 2 steps back and retreated to a safe distance. Then, he grinned and revealed what he thought was a very kind smile. "Father, do you think this is okay?" Then, he was hit by the old man's shoehorn. Xiaoqing's mouth twitched. Look at that smile. Was it hereditary? Fortunately, Qin Zixi wasn't like this father and son. Looking at Qin Zixi's fair and tender appearance, she probably took after her mother. "Move aside. Don't embarrass yourself." After the old man scolded Father Qin, he looked at the little bun gently. "What do you want to eat tonight? Grandpa will ask someone to make it for you." The little bun counted on his fingers. "I want to eat sweet and sour pork ribs and wintermelon soup." As he counted, he turned around and asked his mommy, "Mommy, can I have a pudding after dinner tonight?" Xiao Qing nodded. She usually wouldn't force Little Bun to eat, but she would control the amount of sweets Little Bun ate because eating too much sweets was bad for his teeth and body. Little Bun immediately said happily, "Then give me a pudding. I want to eat strawberry-flavored ones." "Sure, anything is fine." The old man's face was so gentle that Father Qin's eyeballs almost fell to the ground. Chapter 310. The old man quickly lifted his foot. "Don't, Grandpa's feet stink. The little bun was even faster and had already helped the old man put on his shoes. The old man's face was flushed, and he was so happy that it was as if the little bun was his grandson. Mr. Chin was speechless. The old man looked up and saw his useless son. He immediately shouted, "Why are you standing there like a fool? Can't you see that there are guests? Why did I give birth to such an idiot?" Mr. Chin was scolded like a wilted eggplant. The old man glared at him. "I told you not to stand there like a fool. Go to the kitchen and tell the chef that we're having sweet and sour pork ribs and winter melon soup tonight. Also, give me a, does the baby like beans? How about scrambled eggs with tomatoes?" The little bun said in a childish voice, "I can eat anything except coriander. Grandpa, you don't have to always order what I like. I'm not picky. Just order whatever you like." "Good baby. Then give me stir-fried green beans and scrambled eggs with tomatoes. Leave the rest to the chef. Don't forget to make dessert too. I want strawberry-flavored pudding." The old man waved his hand. Mr. Chin felt that he had been reduced to a housekeeper. He felt wronged. "Hurry up." The old man glared at him. "I always thought that you couldn't think straight. Now that I see it, you're really stupid." Mr. Chin was defeated. The old man was in a very good mood. This good mood lasted until dinner. During dinner, the little bun sat beside him. He kept putting food in the little bun's bowl. He was even more considerate than Xiaoqing, the little bun's mother. The little bun would also put food in his bowl. Those who didn't know would definitely think that the little bun was the old man's grandson. Even Qin Zishi was ignored. Thus, Qin Zishi and Mr. Chin formed a pitiful father-son team. One was ignored by his father, and the other was ignored by his grandfather. After dinner, the little bun sat at the side and ate the pudding contentedly. The old man then asked Xiaoqing, "You're not from the capital, right?" Xiaoqing nodded. "We're from the survivor base in S City. So, did you come to the capital to take a look, or what?" If it was someone else, he would definitely not ask this question. The old man's position in the Celestial Empire was unshakable. There were not many people who could make him pay attention to them, especially the younger generation, which was even rarer. It was because of the little bun and the fact that Xiaoqing was to his liking that he asked a few more questions. "Originally, I just wanted to come over and take a look. I also have the idea of settling down here, but I haven't decided yet." Xiaoqing didn't say too much. She understood what the old man meant. If they wanted to settle down, the old man would definitely help them. Xiaoqing really didn't want to owe others too much. If Qin Zishi wanted to help her, she definitely wouldn't say anything. But if Qin Zishi's grandfather wanted to help her, it wasn't the same concept. The old man could also see Xiaoqing's thoughts, so he didn't ask much. He only said, "Well, settling down here is not bad. You can stay at our house tonight. It's quite late now, and it's troublesome to find a place to stay. There are quite a lot of rooms at home, so it won't be a problem for the few of you to stay." Xiaoqing didn't plan to refuse. The old man immediately said, "Let the baby sleep with me tonight. Is that okay, baby?" "Okay." The little bun blinked and immediately said, "Well, if Grandpa likes me, he won't object to me being good friends with Brother Xiaoxi, right? Grandpa, why don't you, Brother Xiaoxi, and I sleep together?" The old man thought about it. Anyway, the bed was quite big, and he didn't lack a grandson. He nodded and then looked at Xiaoqing. An old man with white hair and beard looked at you with expectant eyes. No one could say no. Xiaoqing could only say, "Don't trouble Grandpa." "I know, Mama," the little bun said obediently. Then, the old man held his grandson's hand in his left hand and the little bun's hand in his right hand. With the feeling of a winner in life, they went upstairs to sleep. Father Qin was left to arrange a place for Xiaoqing and the others to stay. Father Qin was quite cold to Xiaoqing. He arranged for the housekeeper to make arrangements for them. Xiaoqing slept in the same room as the two octopuses she brought. Yes, the two octopuses crawled over in the middle of the night. When the two of them went over, it was already the middle of the night. Normal people would be asleep at this time, but Xiaoqing wasn't. She leaned on the bed and looked at the ceiling. Yin Chiyue was the first to go over. He organized his words and said, "Are you still thinking about the man you met today?" "Humph. What's there to think about that kind of gigolo?" Look, the two of us are enough. Dai agreed and leaned over. That's right. What's so good about that kind of gigolo? Qing sighed and said, how did you know I was thinking about him? Do you even need to ask? You definitely know each other. Just by looking at the way he looks at you. I know that he has feelings for you. Humph. Qiue whispered. He definitely has feelings for you. Qing smiled and said, then do you want to guess what I'm thinking about? Are you thinking about your past? Qiue widened his eyes and said, I think there must be something between you two. Qing said indifferently, you're half right. Am I right that you're thinking about your past? Or that there's something between you two? In fact, Qiue appeared to be jealous, but he knew in his heart that Qing's old man's eyes were definitely not gentle. He just saw that Qing was in a bad mood and deliberately made her happy. Qing said, the second half of the sentence. Qiue immediately went over and said coquettishly, that's already the past. You have to look forward. Look at your side. With someone as handsome as me, why are you still thinking about him? I'm thinking about how to kill him. Qing said very seriously, I've already thought of dozens of ways to die. Do you want to help me? Qiue was speechless. Chapter 311. Although Qiue had been a little jealous before, he just wanted to shrink his head back because he had heard Qing's cold words clearly. She was telling the truth. She was indeed thinking about how to kill Lin Qifan, and she had thought of more than one method. But who was Qiue? He had an unscrupulous personality. If Qing killed someone, he would pass the knife to her. If Qing was tired, he would take the knife and help her kill for a while. He didn't care who Qing wanted to kill, whether it was a powerful paranormal, an innocent person, or a big boss. As long as Qing wanted to kill someone, he would help without hesitation. Perhaps in many people's eyes, Qiue's personality was very dangerous and creepy, but Qing liked it. She liked this part of him. What was the purpose of a person's life? Others didn't know, but Qing only wanted the people she cared about to live a better life. As long as she could live a better life, it was enough. Especially in this post-apocalyptic world, if she didn't take advantage of the current situation, when would she have the chance? Perhaps she would lose her head tomorrow. She was most afraid of being betrayed, but Qiue wouldn't betray her. His extreme fanaticism, his extreme love for her, and his extreme personality were the reasons why Qing trusted him so much. Even Yin Hanqing's trust in Qing was slightly lower than Qiue's. There was also Dai. Dai wasn't a human, and he relied on Qing to the extreme. It could be said that Dai was the person Qing trusted the most. So while Qing was thinking about how to kill Lin Qifan, the two of them were already thinking about how to help Qing kill him. They didn't even need to ask why Qing wanted to kill Lin Qifan, because if Qing wanted Lin Qifan dead, they would kill Lin Qifan. Qing understood this clearly, but she didn't want to hide it from the two men. So Qing said calmly, Lin Qifan is the baby's biological father. The two men were stunned. In the past, when people asked Qing who the baby's biological father was, Qing would either smile and say that the baby's biological father was dead. They didn't expect that the dead baby's father would appear again. Lin Qifan was my husband. Lin Qifan was my husband. We were married and registered, but I didn't know that he cheated on me. I didn't know until the day of the apocalypse when his mistress killed me while I was pregnant. Only then did I know that I was quite unfortunate, but also very lucky. Coincidentally, the apocalypse happened. Perhaps it was because I was infected with the zombie virus and awakened my superpower a second before I breathed my last. That's why I didn't die. I crawled out of the hospital freezer and gave birth to the baby, turning into a half-human, half-zombie monster. Qing's tone was very calm. At the beginning of the apocalypse, she was angry and extreme. She only thought about revenge, and her entire being was consumed by bloodthirsty thoughts. But now, when that person was mentioned again, she didn't have any emotions. Her heart was as calm as a windless lake. It was probably because Dai and the others had healed the wound in her heart. Although Qing spoke very calmly, the two men were about to go crazy. How could there be such a man in this world? He clearly already had the best treasure in the world, but he insisted on abandoning it like a shoe and picking up some trash. Although they were glad that the man was blind and didn't recognize the real treasure, they felt even more sorry for Xiaoqing. She was betrayed by her own husband, killed by a mistress, and was pregnant when she died. Chapter 312. Xiaoqing must have been very sad and desperate at that time. Now, even without Xiaoqing, the two of them wanted to tear that idiot apart. Especially Yin Chiyue. He wanted to bang his head against the wall. Seriously, how could there be such an idiot in this world? If he had Xiaoqing and Xiaoqing was willing to give birth to his child, he would have been overjoyed. He would be willing to shorten his life by 10 years. But this man, not only did he not cherish Xiaoqing, he even left her behind to find another woman. He must be an idiot. How could such a lucky man not be him? Moreover, it was all because of this idiot that Xiaoqing was unwilling to accept another man as her lover. It made his pursuit of her difficult and long. All right, let's go to sleep. Anyway, he's in the capital. If you want to kill him, you can do it any time. I'm not in a hurry at all, Xiaoqing said calmly. She had to think of a unique way to kill him. She had to think of a way to kill Lin Qifan. Xiaoqing felt very uncomfortable if she did not look at him and feel the despair she felt back then. The two men closed their eyes obediently. In fact, they were thinking about how to torture Lin Qifan. In fact, killing a person was not the best choice for revenge. Making him beg for death was more satisfying, especially for this kind of idiot. Wouldn't it be too easy for him to die too quickly? Early the next morning, the two men got out of bed and went back to their rooms. Then, they pretended to have just woken up and came out of their rooms. Who didn't know what they were trying to do? Who didn't know where they slept last night? Father Qin ran away early, probably to hide from the old man. Xiaoqing stretched and went downstairs lazily. As soon as she came downstairs, she saw a rich lady sitting on the first floor. The noblewoman was drinking tea. Her clothes and appearance were top-notch. Xiaoqing was stunned. The noblewoman was also stunned. She narrowed her eyes and looked at Xiaoqing warily. Xiaoqing didn't know her, but judging from her age, she should be in her 30s. Naturally, she had to be polite in someone else's house. Xiaoqing said, "Madam, I'm Qin Zishi's friend." "Oh, so you are little Shi's friend." The woman narrowed her eyes, but the vigilance in her eyes did not disappear. She smiled and said, "I'm Xiao Shi's mother." "So it's..." Xiaoqing was stunned for a moment and couldn't say the word auntie. After all, the age gap between her and this woman wasn't that big. Counting carefully, she was 28 years old this year and was almost 30 years old. At this time, little Baozi ran down, followed by Qin Zishi and the old man. Little Baozi ran over first and jumped into Xiaoqing's arms. Then, he gave Xiaoqing a morning kiss. "Good morning, Mama." Xiaoqing's eyes softened. She touched little Baozi's head and said, "How did you sleep last night? Were you naughty?" "I slept very well. I just missed Mama a little." Little Baozi pouted and said coquettishly, "I was very obedient. I wasn't naughty at all." "That's good." Xiaoqing said, Call her auntie." Little Baozi turned to look at the woman and said softly, "Hello, auntie." The woman's vigilance almost overflowed. She pursed her lips and smiled. "What a cute baby." She stood up and walked over. First, she touched Qin Zishi's head lovingly. Then, she smiled and said, "Daddy, you look so good today." The old man's face was cold and expressionless. Then, he said, "That's enough. There are no outsiders here. There's no need for formalities. Tell them to eat breakfast. The baby should be hungry." Chapter 313. The woman lowered her head slightly. Her eyes were filled with confusion. She was Qin Zishi's stepmother. Qin Zishi's mother had passed away when she gave birth to him. Mr. Qin was worried that a child without a mother would go astray, so he remarried and married Mrs. Qin. However, Qin Zishi didn't like her stepmother. After marrying Mr. Qin, Mrs. Qin hadn't been able to give birth. She had gone to the hospital for a checkup and found nothing wrong with her body. There were only two possibilities. Either there was something wrong with Mr. Chin's body, or he didn't want her to give birth. The answer was obvious. If there was something wrong with Mr. Chin's body, how did Qin Zishi give birth to him? It was obvious that Mr. Qin didn't want her to give birth to the heir of the Qin family, or he was worried that after she gave birth to the child of the Qin family, the child would compete with Qin Zishi for the Qin family. Therefore, Mrs. Qin had been brooding. Now, there was a woman who was very good-looking and had a child. More importantly, she seemed to be liked by Qin Zishi and the old man. How could Mrs. Qin not be vigilant? She looked at the little bun carefully, but the little bun looked like Xiao Qing. She couldn't tell if the little bun was related to Mr. Qin. After looking for a while, Mrs. Qin smiled and said, "I'll go tell the chef now." After Mrs. Qin left, the old man took the baby and Qin Zishi to sit on the sofa. The housekeeper came up and poured some tea. "How many days do you plan to stay?" The old man took a sip of tea and asked in a low voice. "We're leaving today. There are people waiting for us at home in S City." Xiao Qing chuckled and said, "We've been away for a long time this time." The old man obviously couldn't bear to part with the little bun, so he asked tentatively, "Why don't you stay for one more day? Today, Xiaoxi will take you around the capital city. It's not easy to come here." Xiao Qing thought about it. One more day wasn't a bad idea. Besides, the little bun probably wanted to spend more time with Qin Zishi. She didn't know when they would meet again, so she nodded and agreed. The old man's brows immediately relaxed, and then he said, "Little Shi, take little Qing and the others to walk around today. Take a look at all the fun and delicious places. I'm already old, and I don't know where is suitable for you young people." Qin Zishi had always been very obedient in front of the old man. "Okay, Grandpa, I will." The woman soon returned and gracefully walked to the side of the sofa. Then, she raised her hand and poured a cup of tea for everyone. Then, she said, "How should I address you?" The little bun said seriously, "Auntie, my mother's name is Xiao Qing. Xiao means Xiao, and Qing means Qing." His description made Qin Zishi laugh. Who would introduce someone with the words, "Little bun is the only one who has the feelings of a lover"? The woman was clearly a little confused by the little bun's unexpected behavior. She forced a smile and said, "It's a very nice name. Can I call you Xiao Qing? If you don't mind, you can call me Sister Shui." Xiao Qing naturally wouldn't embarrass her. She called out softly, "Sister Shui?" "Xiao Qing, this is your first time in the capital, right?" the woman asked. "Yes," Xiao Qing said dryly. She couldn't get used to the sudden enthusiasm, especially when it wasn't pure. "Haha, Xiao Qing, where are you from? The capital city is very big and prosperous. Since you have nothing to do these 2 days, why don't we go out and have a look?" the woman said enthusiastically. Xiao Qing held the cup and said expressionlessly, "I'm from the survivor base in S City, but I won't bother you. I'll go out with Xiao Shi and the others." Chapter 314. Don't be so courteous with Sister Shui. We're all friends. Before the woman could finish, Qin Zishi interrupted her expressionlessly. "All right, stop pretending to be a good person here. I'll take Sister Qing out for a walk." The woman's expression was a little ugly. After a while, she recovered. "Lil Shi, what are you saying? Don't you understand what I'm saying?" Qin Zishi's expression was cold, not giving her any face. "I said, I don't need your fake kindness. I'll take my friends out for a walk. Do you understand?" The old man coughed and said, "Lil Shi, how can you talk to your mother like that?" "Who's my mother?" "My mother is downstairs. She doesn't deserve to be my mother." With that, Qin Zishi pushed the teacup away and walked out. When the little bun saw this, he quickly jumped down from Xiao Qing's arms and ran after Qin Zishi, leaving the 3 adults behind. The atmosphere was extremely awkward. After a long time, the old man said calmly, "Xiao Shui, Lil Shi's temper is like that. Don't take it to heart." Although he said that, he didn't blame Qin Zishi in his eyes. Clearly, he didn't like this daughter-in-law very much. However, no matter how much he disliked her, he still had to give her face because she was Papa Qin's daughter-in-law. She was his daughter-in-law. Since she had entered his family, he had to give her the respect she deserved. Father, why would I blame Lil Shi? Sigh. His temper needs to be changed. The woman quickly recovered and said to Xiao Qing apologetically, I'm sorry, little Qing. I made a fool of myself. Xiao Qing quickly shook her head and held the teacup, not saying a word. The richer the family, the more complicated it was. Previously, she was thinking of finding a stepfather for the little bun. After all, it wasn't good for the baby to be fatherless. But now, she was starting to waver. Was it really good to find a stepfather? If the little bun was like Lil Shi and didn't have a good life, then she might as well not find a stepfather and let her son be bullied for no reason. The old man at the side also said, Xiao Qing, we've really embarrassed ourselves in front of you this time. Lil Shi's temper is too rash. Just this point alone makes me very worried. Xiao Qing didn't say anything and only smiled. She also felt that the atmosphere was extremely awkward and couldn't sit still. Fortunately, Yin Qiue and the others had come down at this moment. The old man stood up and said, I'll go look for little Shi. You young people should sit together and chat. I won't interfere. I'll go. Xiao Qing, who was eager to get rid of this awkward situation, volunteered. The second person who volunteered was the woman. However, the old man waved his hand and said, I'm not that old that I can't walk. You guys sit down. I'll just take it as a walk. After the old man left, the atmosphere didn't ease up at all because there was nothing to talk about. It was only when Yin Qiue and the others walked over that Yin Qiue was like an octopus. The moment she came over, she occupied the seat on Xiao Qing's left. It was as though she had no bones as she leaned on Xiao Qing's body softly. Dummy immediately sat on the right side of Xiao Qing, which made the woman stunned. She looked up and saw all kinds of handsome men, including those who were cold and ascetic, those who were handsome and strong, those who were enchanting and charming, and those who were cute and handsome. None of them looked bad. They directly surrounded Xiao Qing. Her jaw was about to hit the ground. Xiao Qing pushed Yin Qiue and frowned. Don't you have any bones? Sit up. Why are you leaning on me? Yin Qiue acted coquettishly and leaned closer. Let me lean on you. Why don't you dislike air dye? Xiao Qing was helpless against this man who was always jealous. She poked Yin Qiue and said embarrassedly, They have such bad tempers. I'm sorry. Chapter 315. The woman's hostility immediately vanished. She finally understood that she had been wrong. How could Xiao Qing have an affair with Papa Qin? Judging by the looks of the men around her, Xiao Qing would never fall for Papa Qin. It wasn't that Papa Qin was ugly. He could be considered handsome, but compared to these men, he was a far cry. Then the little bun definitely wasn't Papa Qin's child and wouldn't fight with her for Papa Qin. The woman immediately relaxed. Her enthusiasm this time was really pure. You guys are all true. She couldn't help but chuckle to herself. After Qin Zishi was found, his expression was still very ugly, but he didn't provoke the woman again. The atmosphere was still a little awkward. After finishing the meal, the old man waved his hand. You can go out and play, but there's a limit. Come back early. Qin Zishi left with the group. He really didn't want to see that woman again. Ever since he could remember, he had fallen out with Papa Qin many times because of this woman. He didn't have a mother. His mother had passed away. This woman had nothing to do with him. Qin Zishi had once fought with Papa Qin because he forced him to call her mother. That time, Papa Qin's face was almost disfigured. Although they were already out, Qin Zishi was still in a bad mood. The little bun didn't know how to comfort his little friend, so he looked at Xiao Qing for help. Xiao Qing gently patted Qin Zishi's back and said, Why are you angry? I hate her. I hate her appearing in my house. My father clearly said that he loved my mother. Then why did he marry another woman after my mother passed away? Qin Zishi's eyes were red. She was very puzzled. Since he was very young, many people had told him that his father and mother were very much in love. However, his father, who said that he loved his mother, married another woman 2 years after his mother passed away. Wasn't this a joke? Could this so-called love only last for 2 years? Xiao Qing patted Qin Zixi head. Adults and children think differently. Perhaps your father really loved your mother, but the dead are gone. We have to think of the living. Even I have considered finding a stepfather for the baby many times. After Xiao Qing said this, many people pricked up their ears, especially Yin Chiwe. She was completely focused on what she was going to say. Why? Because the books say that children who grow up without a father easily lose their father's love. When they grow up, they will easily go astray. Xiao Qing chuckled and said, I want my child to grow up healthy. I don't want him to be criticized because he doesn't have a father. I want to give him a complete family and a happy childhood. I think your father would think the same. Qin Zixi sneered, then whispered, someone like him wouldn't. Seeing that Qin Zixi was a little convinced, Little Bun quickly comforted his little friend and diverted his attention. Brother Xiao Shi, don't be sad. Play with the baby. He picked up Yaya and threw a ball out. He said to Yaya, go and pick it up. Yaya, who was forced to become a dog, had no choice but to run all the way out while whimpering. Then, he picked up the ball. The ball rolled and rolled until it reached a person's feet. Yaya had just picked up the ball when he was picked up by someone. Oh my God, what a cute rabbit. But why only one ear? Little Bun saw that Yaya had been picked up by someone else. He quickly ran over and tiptoed. Sister, can you return Yaya to me? The girl raised her eyebrows. This is your rabbit? Little Bun nodded. Yes, yes. Then, he felt a very strange gaze looking at him. Little Bun turned his head in confusion and saw a man looking at him with a very complicated gaze. Little Bowsy didn't want to stay any longer, so the girl returned the rabbit to him. He ran back with the rabbit in his arms and into his mother's embrace. Then, he whispered, Mama, there's a strange uncle who keeps looking at me. Xiao Qing looked up and couldn't help but sneer. What was that saying again? Enemies are bound to meet on a narrow road. Chapter 316. The little Bun was delicate and pretty. His features were very similar to Xiao Qing's, but there was a slight resemblance between him and Lin Qifan. Lin Qifan was stunned. He suddenly remembered that at the very beginning, he and Xiao Qing were still very loving. At that time, he would often listen quietly through Xiao Qing's belly. It was like he could hear the baby moving inside. Every now and then, the baby would kick him. The excitement in his heart couldn't help but overflow. That was his first child. He would look a lot like him and Xiao Qing. He would call him Daddy and Mommy. Later on, when he and Fu Jinling fell out, he thought about giving up on Fu Jinling and giving up on the easy promotion. But he couldn't do it. He was a child from a poor family. It wasn't easy for him to get into a famous university. After struggling his way out of a small mountain village, he had enough of living in poverty. So, whenever he had the chance to climb up the ladder, he would rather die than give it up. During that period of time, he was often in a daze. On one hand, he felt the guilt of betrayal, and on the other, he felt the thrill of a promotion. Fu Jinling didn't have any siblings. In other words, as long as he married Fu Jinling and waited for her father to pass away, the company would be in his hands. So, as soon as Fu Jinling expressed her interest in him, he immediately climbed up the ladder. The huge temptation made him forget about his wife at home and the difficult days he had with Xiao Qing. He hid Xiao Qing's existence from Fu Jinling and was sweet with her. Until Xiao Qing was exposed. Fu Jinling argued with him and asked him to divorce her. As he agreed, he didn't want to give up on Xiao Qing. Lin Qifan once thought that perhaps he could divorce Xiao Qing and use sweet words to bewitch her into becoming his secret lover. Then, he would have both wealth and beauty in his arms. However, Lin Qifan was well aware that Xiao Qing was a very proud person. In fact, she wasn't a simple person. The first time he met Xiao Qing, it was when Xiao Qing was injured. Her injury was a gunshot wound. Although Lin Qifan still didn't know Xiao Qing's true identity after their marriage, he was sure of one thing. Xiao Qing had a strong personality. If she found out he had cheated on her, she would rather die than be his secret lover. Just the thought of Xiao Qing leaving him and perhaps becoming another man's wife, making Lin Qifan's jealousy. The jealousy in his heart was like a thick venom, slowly fermenting it. Therefore, when he found out that Fu Jinling wanted to deal with Xiao Qing, he didn't stop Fu Jinling. What he couldn't have, why should he let someone else have it? If Fu Jinling killed Xiao Qing, it would be killing two birds with one stone. He wouldn't have to worry about Xiao Qing divorcing him and marrying another man. Moreover, he would have something on Fu Jinling. Even if she didn't like him in the future, she wouldn't dare to leave him. As for children, even if he lost them, he could always have another one. However, when the news of Xiao Qing's death came, Lin Qifan regretted it. He felt that he was too infatuated. Whenever he thought of the time he spent with Xiao Qing, his heart would ache. However, what did he see now? He saw a child who called Xiao Qing mother. Moreover, that child looked similar to him. Was that his child? Lin Qifan was ecstatic. After the apocalypse, he didn't have any superpowers, so he could only go with the flow. Fortunately, he had a good appearance. So many capable or powerful women were interested in him. That was how he managed to survive. However, those who were interested in him weren't first-rate people. Therefore, he still had to keep a low profile and rely on others. Chapter 317. Until now, he had been wandering between many women. While relying on women to survive, he looked down on those women who kept him as their mistresses. Especially yesterday, Lu Exine avoided Qin Zishi like a snake and was extremely afraid. After returning home, Lu Exine explained to him who Qin Zishi was. He was one of the top 3 young masters in the capital. However, this young master was clearly very close to Xiao Qing, so Lin Qifan had other thoughts. He felt that he could let Xiao Qing return to his side. He still loved Xiao Qing the most, and presumably, Xiao Qing was the same. Moreover, Xiao Qing didn't know the truth back then. At most, she would push all the blame to Fu Jinling. If he said a few good words to Xiao Qing, she would definitely forgive him. In the past, when he occasionally did something wrong, as long as he said some gentle words, Xiao Qing would forgive him. Now, it would definitely be the same. Xiao Qing must have been cold to him because she was still angry. It would be fine once her anger subsided. Moreover, now there was a little bun. Looking at the age, it didn't match. Even if Xiao Qing didn't die at that time and gave birth to a child, it definitely couldn't be this old. Similarly, it was impossible for her to give birth to a child for someone else, so there was only one possibility, and that was that this child was adopted by Xiao Qing. She probably had a miscarriage, so she adopted a child to comfort herself. However, when Xiao Qing adopted a child, she chose a child who was 70% similar to Xiao Qing and 30% similar to him. Didn't this fully prove that Xiao Qing still had him in her heart? Therefore, Lin Qifan was very confident. He adjusted his expression to make himself look melancholic and affectionate. Then, he walked toward Xiao Qing. "Ah Qing, are you still angry with me? I don't know anything. She was the one who kept sticking to me. I didn't expect her to harm you. Ah Qing, come back to me, okay? I will." As soon as he approached, he was stopped by Xiao Tong's mental barrier before he could finish speaking. Yin Qiue casually waved her hand, and a stream of air hit Lin Qifan's chest, forcing him to take a few steps back and sit on the ground. Yin Qiue lifted her chin and looked at Lin Qifan with contempt as if she was looking at a piece of trash. She said sarcastically, "Who do you think you are? How dare you spout nonsense? Is Ah Qing someone you can call? Why are you angry with him? My heart will ache." The corners of Xiao Qing's lips curled up, and her eyes softened. Although this man was disgusting, it didn't stop people who were good to her from protecting her. Yin Qiue was teased by Xiao Qing's words. She immediately changed from being mean to Xiao Qing to being gentle. "Then let's ignore him. We were in a good mood when we went out shopping, but it was all ruined by him." Lin Qifan's heart was filled with hatred, but his expression was even more affectionate. With a pale face, he lowered his voice and said, "Ah Qing, are you not willing to forgive me?" At this time, the young girl who was accompanying him walked over with an ugly expression. This young girl was not the Lu Exine from yesterday. She looked slightly older than Lu Exine. The only similarity was that she had a face full of arrogance. Lin Qifan, what are you doing? Who is this woman? The young woman's face was filled with anger. When she looked at Xiao Qing again, her eyes were filled with murderous intent. It wasn't that she loved Lin Qifan that much. It was just that subconsciously, Lin Qifan had been classified as her private property. Now, this private property had applied for and confessed to another woman. It would be strange if she was happy about it. Lin Qifan didn't want to offend this young woman, but he knew very well that if he didn't act decisively and show Xiao Qing his sincerity, it would be impossible for him and Xiao Qing to be together. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.